Accepting benefits like Social Security or a driver's license actually chains you to a $36 trillion debt. On Bernthal Corporate Fiction, we are revealing how these privileges indenture you to a banking cartel. Let's unlock this hidden system, and you decide if you're free. Your birth certificate is the title to your estate, your life, labor, and property. When you accept federal benefits like Social Security or a driver's license, you enter a trust indenture. In 1933, Congress mortgaged the estates of federal citizens to a central banking cartel tied to London's Crown Corporation. By 1935, your Social Security number linked your property to this debt, making you a trustee, not an owner. The law of mortgages lets the lender profit from your estate's value, your work, your home, your automobile, like rent you pay to live in your own life. The 14th Amendment of 1868, sold as equal protection for freed slaves, was a trick to create federal citizens, subjects under a federal corporation, not sovereign people. Chisholm v. Georgia says, "We the people create government, so Congress can't mortgage state citizens' estates." But McDonnell v. State proves federal citizenship is voluntary, not mandatory. By accepting benefits, you're presumed a federal person, a resident alien in your own state, managed like a tenant. Section 4 of the amendment guarantees the public debt, using your estate as collateral, not granting equality. Accepting benefits makes you a federal citizen, subject to the Motor Vehicle Code, revenue codes, and property taxes. These aren't laws, but administrative rules, managing your estate as if you're a pauper or incompetent. Your driver's license ties your Social Security trust to fines, treating your car as debt collateral. Income taxes charge you for labor. Property taxes bill you for a home you own, because you're a trustee with equitable rights, not lawful ownership. This system, rooted in 1933, profits the bankers while you get privileges, not unalienable rights. Opt out and you reclaim sovereignty. Accepting benefits indentures you to a banking cartel, your life leased for their profit. Are you a sovereign state citizen or a federal trustee? Search Burn the Corporate Fiction on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are in Rome, another night of being chattel of a foreign corporation that is hostile, has territorially occupied us as a hostile enemy. Right. Tonight we're going to be discussing the documents that you should carry with you in a right to travel binder. Right. So again, anybody who tells you there's a silver bullet is lying to you. I promise. Don't believe me? You will find out sooner or later. There is no silver bullet. But what I'm going to do is attempt to teach you what you need to have with you and how to present it to have the best results in exercising your unalienable right of locomotion, i.e. travel. But before I do, let me say hi to the few of you that are in the chat already. We got Fozzie under a new account. Deb, Pat said that he has to go for the evening. That's cool. He's got to get up tomorrow. Got FE Nation, and of course I have Kevin right there with us too. You're more than welcome to come up and ask those questions you had during our Jurist Society meeting earlier, Kevin, because I know you came in at the tail end of that. And of course I have with me Mojo. How are you doing this evening, Mojo?
Doing okay. Thanks for having me on, Guy. Always a pleasure.
Oh, of course, man. Of course. I enjoy having you on. You ask questions other people may be thinking if they're not. Maybe they don't want to come up on panel, but they're wondering the same thing, so it works out. All right. So tonight, in order to know what it is you're trying to convey to the officer on the side of the road pirate, the clown that was on the thumbnail you clicked when you started watching this video, that's pretty much a generalization of all of them. Well, maybe not all of them. Some of them are okay. They're just there for a paycheck, but whatever. You gotta be fair. But They are policy enforcement officers for a foreign corporation. They are enforcing public policy. Once upon a time, that used to be called public law. If you go back into the 1800s and you look at what the statutes at large were considered, it was public law, right? But it's not still actually law. It was just supposed to be in conformity with law, so it did not need consent to have the color of law, right? It was just an interpretation of something that's already law as applied to the republic and society in the republic. All right, so they are policy enforcement officers. That's why they are called police. And what they are doing is they are enforcing a trust indenture. They presume you to be a 14th Amendment citizen, the same class of citizenship that was created for the newly freed slaves, who required protection, privileges, and immunities because they had been utterly dependent up until that point and had no idea how to take care of themselves in general. Not every single one of them, but in general. So the 14th Amendment was created like, hey, okay, we're going to enfranchise these people. They're going to come under our protection. They're going to be persons, right? And we're going to grant them privileges and immunities, which later ended up being called civil rights. They're not rights. The privileges and immunities given by man and can be taken away by man, by the legislature, by Congress, right? Your unalienable rights exist prior to God. Now, I mentioned God. Buzzword for a lot of people who watch this channel. They say, I'm an atheist. Law has nothing to do with religion. I actually want to start the show out tonight. It has nothing to do with religion. That's true. Actually, so the Vatican obviously controls the Crown Corporation, which has infiltrated every nation with bar pirates to ultimately fulfill the papal bull Unum Sanctum by placing the whole world in a trust indenture and bringing them under ultimately the authority of the Pope, whether you know it or not. But not getting into that, the very origin of law is the Bible. And if you don't believe me, you wouldn't believe Mr. Brandon Joe Williams himself, who likes to play in the UCC sandbox, which is fine, whatever, but you cannot discharge debt. You're supposed to lawfully be able to discharge debts. He tells people you can, but you'll never be able to do it, I guarantee you, because if you did, their whole security system would collapse in on itself. So, but outside of that, you'll never believe what he said. So I'm going to share this with you real quick. And I was quite surprised to hear it coming out of his mouth. Not that I even really know him or know much about him. I just didn't, since he's so focused on the commercial aspect of it, I didn't expect him to come across the spiritual aspect. But what this proves to me is that he actually is a true student of the law. So I can say that about him, because he also came to the inevitable conclusion that every jurist must come to. It all goes back to God as the fount of authority. Watch this, Brandon Joe Williams himself.
I'm not a Christian, but trust law requires you to study a lot having to do with the Bible. It's all from the Bible. It's all from that type of thing. So regardless of how religious you are, if you want to get into trust and trust law and go down that rabbit hole in a deep and meaningful way, you will be studying the Bible. You will be studying Bible verses. You will be studying the Word of Jesus Christ, whether you are religious or want to or not. I have no desire to be a Christian or to.
He very much sounds like he's not a big fan of it. But even that's my point of showing him. Begrudgingly, he's saying whether you want to or not, you could tell he doesn't want to, but you have to, because that's where it all comes from. It all stems from there originally. No matter what you want to say about it, right? The fact that you do not know that right now and would argue with me, if that's something that I'm not saying for everybody, but if that you have that initial feeling, that's because they've taken that knowledge away from you. And that's how they control you, because they took that from you. Okay?
To involve myself at all, but I have a strong desire in taking this information that's in this book called the Bible, and realizing that it all of law, really all of law comes from the Bible. So you have a parable from the Bible, and then that becomes.
Look at that. He went from mostly based on the Bible to then he's honest with it. It's all of it comes from the Bible, because you either have law or you have statutes, codes, canons, rules, decrees, and all the other stuff regulating commerce, property, and administrating incompetence and the dregs of society, right? So you either have law or you have man-made rules that require some sort of man-made arrangement for you to come under another man or woman nowadays, in whatever case, right? That must necessarily exist for you to be subject to anything other than law. And what is law? Law is do not violate another's free will. And we're going to get into that. I'll prove that with Supreme Court case. Not only does Blackstone say that, William Blackstone and Blackstone's commentaries, which again, I can never recommend enough. Everybody at least listen to the audio recording on YouTube of all four books, or at least the first three. The fourth one, not really as important because it doesn't necessarily apply to people in their everyday life, but let's finish this.
Comes like a huge, like really, really basic element in the legal system.
Mm.
And I feel like a lot of that's the Bible and trust law. So it's a fascinating philosophical, spiritual journey that a lot of Christians are getting involved in. They see this as literally like even a greater understanding than their own church of the voice of God. It's almost like a church for a lot of people, even though I don't look at it that way. But it's like there's a lot of people who run board who are like, I'm getting more closer to God from this material than I am from my own church, which is like crazy, right? I'm not a Christian.
So I've never been a church person, but that's very much true for me. In fact, I found God by finding the devil, right? Once I found the devil, then I was like, well, if there's a devil, there has to be God. And that ultimately started it. And then as I became more inclined to become a jurist, to become a student of the law, and I studied the law, I realized, wow, it's all based on the Bible. Like even these people, these judges that don't like you to bring up God in the courtroom because they think that they're God and all this stuff, they still know that this is where it all comes from. They're just the other side of it. It's interesting. And we are going to get into the right to the travel stuff, but this is just my introduction. It's interesting because when I think about it, you go all the way back to Babylon. What do you have in the Bible? The Tower of Babel, right? Which is blah, 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 Babel, right? And the very first record of any sort of written law is called the Hammurabi Code from ancient Babylon. And the Hammurabi Code was literally a system of regulating commerce and trade. And so I often wonder if that was not the, if it didn't have something, because that's what they're ultimately doing here now. So anyway, all right, let's get into the subject matter. What are you trying? So the first thing we have to understand is comprehend, because I know some people are touchy with that word, whatever, that kind of went viral and now everybody, but anyways, what people comprehend is who does the motor vehicle code apply to? Mojo?
People doing commerce or government officials, military people.
What class of person? What class of, person, exactly.
A citizen
of
the United States.
The 14th Amendment. Yes. The United States federal citizen.
14th Amendment citizen. Okay. That's the way to put it.
Yep. So essentially one of the very first things that you have to explain to the road pirate, okay, and he's going to be resistant to it, is that there is a difference between a federal and state citizen, and you have to prove it. So the two things I recommend carrying for that are, got it somewhere here. Hold on. There it is. Black's Law Dictionary, right? Which we have to go, which I should have had this. I thought it was already on the dang thing, but apparently not. So C, we got to go down to 14th Amendment, Black's Law. E, F. This is 4th edition. You can find this on archive.org. You can print it right off there. Right? So it's not that. So we're just past it. Okay, Friedman. It's going to be right up here. There's not that many F law words, believe it or not. Still a lot, though. Okay. Right here. 14th Amendment. You want to print this page. I have this page printed. It's part of my travel binder. So 14th Amendment in Black's Law 4th edition. The reason being is because it denotes that federal citizenship was not created till 1868. So it says, and now I have Black's Law 11th edition hard copy. Actually, my dad got it for me one year for, I think, Christmas or something, but got Black's Law 11th. Black's Law 11th no longer says this. It doesn't say anything against it. It just omits the fact that it was a created citizenship way after the fact, right? So it tells you the 14th Amendment, which does create a United States citizen, right? Or the United States citizen as we know it, says it became part of the organic law July 28th, 1868. and its importance entitles it to special mention. It creates, or at least recognizes for the first time, a citizenship of the United States as distinct from that of the states. So boom, you keep this with you. This automatically establishes that there are two different citizenships. Okay, because this is the very first thing you need that cop to understand. You need him to stand under this. You do, because he's trying to, he presumes that you are a foreign resident alien whose sole purpose in his area is engaging in commerce at all times. Because that's what 14th Amendment citizens are. They're commercial property, essentially. They've been mortgaged to create this commercial scheme. Every Federal Reserve note is backed by the mortgage of your estate. That brings me to another document that you need, because as if I'm explaining this to the cop, you need this right here. House Congressional Record, March 9th, 1933. Just print this page. You know, you can just print this page. Just print this page and then highlight this part. The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar. Just this, whoops, get out of here. Just this left side of the divider. The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. In the short that I made, that's that the law of mortgages allows these courts pretending to be, or these banks pretending to be courts, to profit, right? These private corporations to profit from the use of your property while the loan is outstanding. So as long as Federal Reserve notes are in circulation, there's a lien on everything you purchase with them, right? And those things are presumed to be held in trust as collateral for the debt that created the Federal Reserve notes in the first place. That's what this cop, he doesn't know that because they only hire people specifically just smart enough to follow orders and too stupid to realize how they're actually enslaving their fellow man, right? They do not hire smart people to be cops, period. They don't, right? In fact, one guy sued a police department because he scored too high on his IQ test and they wouldn't give him the job because he was too smart. I'm not just saying this. They really want dumb thugs to be their Roman centurions, which is exactly what they are, because we're still in Rome. It never went anywhere, and Rome is Babylon. So it literally never went anywhere. It just keeps migrating. Its headquarters keeps migrating, basically, like its mainstay, because it's actually the three districts that are its headquarters, the Triple Crown, which would be the District of Columbia being the military arm, the Crown District of London, Financial District of London being the financial arm, and of course, Vatican City being the religious arm of this triple-headed hydra that we are against. So, anyways, this is the second document you need. So you need this to show that it's mortgaged, right? Now, if you want to go the extra mile, you can even pull up the definition of mortgage and prove that as long as the loan, here, let's see if I can highlight this. Nope, hold on. Here we go. All right. That meant as far as the borrower was concerned, the real estate, or just the estate in general, in our case, because and the estate is essentially your right to property. Let's just simplify it. Your estate has been mortgaged, so that means while it's under mortgage, this is the law of mortgage, definition of mortgage, says that as far as the borrower is concerned, the estate was of no value, that is dead, until the debt was paid in full. And the reason being is because the lender is entitled to not only payments of interest, which they get through income tax, but also the rents and profits of the real estate, or in your case, just the estate and all the property tied to it linked to your social security number. That's what the cop's job is. That policy enforcement, that's actually his job, is to collect the rents and profits from the property that is being used as collateral while the loan is outstanding, because that is their right under the law of mortgage, but only against 14th Amendment citizens. Okay? So you print this to accompany the 1933 page where it shows and proves without a doubt that they mortgaged your estate right here. That's what it means. All homes and other property, that's your estate. Your estate is every bit of property. It's your personality, labor, and every bit of property you have interest in. And they mortgaged your estate. And I also print this one when talking about the mortgage. Okay, I print Fiduciary foundations of administrative law. And I print the first several pages down to 121 just to prove where it comes from. This is a UCLA law review. It's Evan J. Criddle, right? And you go down to 121, and it tells you that Congress and the president acted jointly as proxy settlers for the sovereign people, right? And settlements means the conveyance of an estate for the benefit of some person or persons. So they conveyed your estate to be held in trust and used as collateral to take out loans from a central banking cartel that has existed for centuries and enslaved every nation. And all property that you acquire, quote unquote acquire, you actually merely hold in trust as a trustee, and it is being used as collateral for the public debt. Under the fourth provision of the 14th Amendment, you cannot question that. And so when you do not use the property the way that you're told to, because you do not own it, you just use it, then they are allowed to fine and fee you. And they are also allowed to fine and fee you to use the property in the first place. That's what registration and licensing and all that good stuff is. You know, you want to go feed your family and hunt your land, you got to go pay daddy government, right? Because you don't have the right to do that unless you get permission as a 14th Amendment citizen. So I'd actually start with well, it's tough to say. It depends on how stupid your road pirate is, right? But you can either start with the mortgage or start with the 14th Amendment citizen. But I'd take the definition of settlement. So let's recap. We take March 9th, 1933, page 83, House Congressional Record, and we highlight where they mortgaged your estate. Okay. And then we take the definition, or what that implies, that they're allowed to collect the rents and profits of the estate while the loan's outstanding. And because the property is under administration, as it's held in trust as collateral, that means they can tell you how to use it, charge you for the use of it, and then fine and fee you for the misuse of it, for not using it the way they told you. You want to make this clear to the road pirate. That's what you're attempting to do to me. But I'm not a 14th Amendment citizen. That requires voluntary consent. So then we get into 14th Amendment citizenship, and that's where you take the Black's Law, 4th edition, you print this page, show him that it became part, the 14th Amendment, it became part of the Organic Law, July 28th, 1868, and its importance entitles it to special mention. It creates, or at least recognizes for the first time, a citizenship of the United States as distinct from that of the states. Oh, there's two types of citizenship. The cop would have never guessed that, right? Because he's dumb. He's a law enforcement officer who has no idea what law is or how it works. And that's on purpose, because this corporation right here, and you can even print this page for him, this English corporation, this extension, it's not even English, it's London. It's the sovereign city of London. This is a commercial extension of the Crown District of London. It always has been. The United States of America has one beneficial owner. It's probably the Crown Corporation, right? It's called the Government of the United States of America, okay? It was notified on July 3rd, 1776. So this is the same corporation we're talking about right here. Look what site this is. This is companieshouse.uk or gov.uk. It's a company search. So yeah, this is a foreign corporation, and they want their Roman centurion, because Rome, or London, was founded by Rome in around 43. Within the first century AD, London was founded, and it has remained sovereign the entire time throughout the history of England, from the time just after Christ all the way to William the Conqueror. Then with the Magna Carta, it was finalized. It was made permanent in the Magna Carta that London would be sovereign, and that's because it's Rome. It's Rome's Western headquarters, right? And now all these companies and corporations that are enslaving us and taking our resources today are actually commercial extensions of the Crown Corporation in London. That's what they are. That all started, who settled the Americas? Those were companies. Companies started being created in 1600, the very first one with the East India Trading Company. You have the Virginia Company, the Delaware Company, the Hudson Bay Company, right? The East India Trading Company ended up becoming this company, the United States of America. All right. The Hudson Bay Company ended up becoming Canada. All right. So these guys these entities have always been intended to place the world in a trust. These companies were made to be bankrupted after making everyone in their territory part of their corporation, then bankrupt them so that you can place them in a trust indenture. This was a deliberate, well thought out step-by-step plan. But you're not going to explain all that shit to the cop because he's not ready for that. That's just for you guys. You take that, right? I just want you to know who came up with this scheme. All right, so back to the 14th Amendment. So you did the mortgage, right? So now you're talking about the 14th Amendment. And so you got Black's Law Dictionary. Now the next one that you need is McDonald v. State. Now in this case right here, a guy was convicted of a crime. I forget which crime. You can read the case if you're actually curious. It's really not as important as this appeal to it. So when he was convicted, he appealed because Henry Bushing, this guy, Henry Bushing, was a German immigrant. And he immigrated to Indiana, okay? And he naturalized in Indiana, but he never naturalized with the federal corporation. So he never became a United States citizen. He was just an Indian. And just so you guys know, here, I'll show you something real quick. This is from the government printing office, right? This is the Styles manual that lists the nationality. Look, it says nationalities: Alabamian, Alaskan, Arizonan, Arkansan, Californian, Coloradan, right? So on and so forth, because your state is your country, not the United States. That's what it means to be a state citizen or to be one of the people of the states, right? That is your country. That's what the whole Civil War is about. Robert E. Lee was asked to lead the Union Army, and he said, as opposed to this war as I am, my duty comes first and foremost to my country of Virginia, because that's his country, right? So they've tricked everyone into thinking that they're a member of this federal corporation so that they can be used as collateral to take out agricultural liens and loans against your estate under Federal Farm Loan Act and obviously the congressional record, so on and so forth. So this is your country. My country is Michigan. I'm a Michiganian, okay? Right here, Michiganian, right? So wherever you in the 50 states you're from, each state is its own country. That's so important to understand. You could print this off and have this with you as well to explain the nationality. So we go back to McDonald v. State. This guy did not naturalize with the federal corporation. He only naturalized with the state. And so the guy who was convicted appealed and said, no, that one of the jurors was an alien. He's not a United States citizen, right? Because this case is from 1883, or no, I'm sorry. Is that when the appeal was? Yeah, 1883. And so this is just after the 14th Amendment, you know, like a decade or and a half after the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868. And so people are thinking that United States citizenship is automatic, and kind of is reflective of the culture of that time, how they were trying to make that a mainstay of just everyone's a United States citizen, right? Because this guy thought he was going to win his appeal. But they denied his appeal because they said the evidence of Bushing on his voir dire, which is what they use to determine if a juror is fit, that's the term it is, showed that although he was not a citizen of the United States, he was a citizen and voter of the state. Under Section 2, Article 2 of our state constitution, one may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. And that's also upheld in Thomason v. State, Corey v. Carter, and those are all Indiana Supreme Court, right? So the thing about the Indiana Supreme Court, oh, well, that's Indiana. I don't live in Indiana, right? Well, Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution says that what people are entitled to in one state, all people are entitled to in all states. I'm just going to keep it simple. That's what it says. So they have a allodial title in Wisconsin. All states have allodial lands then, right? You can be a citizen of the state, not a citizen of the United States in Indiana. Well, obviously it's the case because there wasn't even a federal citizen until 1868. It's common sense. So you have this and you'd be like, dude, see this? You're trying to enforce revenue code. Now, that brings us to the next and very important one. Long v. Rasmussen. You print this out. Okay, let me see. I know I have it up somewhere because I just seen it. Yep, right there. Okay. Long v. Rasmussen, right? Edna Long, the IRS guy, I forget his first name, Rasmussen, tried to distrain, which means to take somebody's property as surety for a payment of debt, right? That's what happens when they seize your property and say, hey, come pay us or you're not going to get this property back, right? That's what towing is. That's a form of distraining, right? That's a common law term, to distrain. So he tried to distrain this lady of her property for a revenue debt, right? And she took him personally to a court of equity because that's how it was done. When you're one of we the people, you don't attain, you're not trying to deal with dead things. Dead things have nothing to say to you in a court, right? You deal with the individual, the man or woman. And so she took him to a court of equity, right? And so they ended up finding that, where we go here, right here. Yep. All right. So, we'll skip that part. All right. Right here. The revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax assessment and collection. That's what the motor vehicle code is. The motor vehicle code is a revenue code. It's part of the lender's beneficial use of your property while it's being used as collateral, while it's held in trust as collateral, and you're a mere trustee of your own estate. While the loan's outstanding, okay, they are able to have beneficial use of it. And this is the plan they devised to have beneficial use of it, is the motor vehicle code, a system of regulation of the property, telling you how to use the property that's under administration, fining or charging you a fee to use it in the first place, licensing and registration, and then fining and feeing you for the misuse of it, going 60 in a 55, or doing a rolling stop at a stop sign. All these dumb, arbitrary freaking codes that are merely designed to be able to fleece you, to take and create an attachment to your legal entity identification, what people commonly call the straw man, which is attached to the Social Security Trust, and then generate their own commercial paper, their own debt currencies, right? And then exchange it for Federal Reserve notes. And they sell it to private investors. Private investors bundle up these institutional securities in mass and then collect when the performance of the obligations are completed. You know what I mean? So it's literally, there's an entire market industry for it. That's why the prison system is, the American Corrections Association is the largest and oldest trading organization in the world. The American Corrections Association. We built the concept of modern day prison system. The multi-billion-dollar prison industrial complex was built by the land of the free. Doesn't that make sense? So, and that's what these guys are doing, because if they can create an attachment to your estate or make you liable for some obligation, they can use your Social Security Trust as the surety to generate the very same thing that Federal Reserve notes are, negotiable instruments. That's what traffic tickets are, right? That's what fines, fees, traffic tickets, bonds, right? All of these things are commercial paper. And ever since 1933, when we switched over from real money to using debt, fiat currency, that is currency. So if they can generate commercial paper, the courts, it's not just the banks, the central bank that's printing money out of thin air. The frickin' courts are actually banks pretending to be court. Well, actually, the definition of bank in Black's Law Dictionary, or bench in Black's Law Dictionary, is a bank, right? And the definition of bank is a bench where the tribunal judges sit. So they are a bank, and they're issuing commercial paper by creating attachments to your account. So let's get back to this. The revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers. Well, that's the lawyery way of saying they relate to federal citizens who are public chattel being used as collateral, right? Because this is 1922, just before the bankruptcy, but after the establishment of the Federal Reserve. So you had instances like this where the newly created IRS would try, the IRS agent being like a cop, stupid and not really knowing the law, right? Just knowing their specific section of the enforcement of code or statute and not knowing how it applies overall. They would try to enforce this on people who were not federal chattel. And that happened here. And so you have some of these cases, they're hard to find, but I found one for you, and this is a great one to print and have. And it shows you they relate to, so The revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax assessment and collections, regulation of property, right? They relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers. The latter are without their scope. No procedure is prescribed for non-taxpayers, and no attempt is made to annul any of their rights and remedies in the due course of law, because they can't. They cannot. Right? The people are above the government. And I'll prove that in a second as well. So with them, Congress does not assume to deal. So a state citizen, a non-federal citizen, non-chattel, right? One of we the people, Congress cannot even assume to deal with you. As far as Congress is concerned and you're concerned, you're in two different universes, because they could never, ever, ever acquire jurisdiction of you, ever. You have to be federal personnel to be under Article 1, Section 8, right? The Commerce Clause. You have to be. And if you're not a 14th Amendment citizen, like McDonald v. State, one may be a citizen of the state, not a citizen of the United States, right? Then this revenue code that the road pirate is trying to enforce on you does not apply. Here is a case that proves it, okay? And Congress cannot even assume to deal with you, right? Because you got to realize all these revenue codes, the motor vehicle code and all that stuff, it started with Congress and federal Congress, and they did their enactments in the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then once they got all their enactments for the commercial system set up for the federal chattel franchise, right, that they want to fleece, then all of the states between the 60s and 70s adopted the mirror of those acts. So in the 40s, they United States did the Uniform Commercial Code and the Administrative Procedures Act, which administration is the regulation of property. That's under administration. That's what administrative law is. So, and when you are a trustee of an estate that's presumed not to be yours, that property is under administration, right? Because there is no heir, there is no owner, and the individual that's using the property is considered incompetent and an infant under Title 1, Section 8 of the United States Code. You're an infant, right? Born alive infant at any stage of development. That's what you are. So you cannot hold title. Plus, you don't have access to lawful money, which is a huge issue as well. When they take away your access to lawful money, they automatically bar your access to law, because you cannot buy anything. You cannot own anything. Therefore, you cannot have a lawful right to it. That's how they were able to abolish the distinction between law and equity, because you no longer have access to law, because you have no lawful right to anything. You only have an equitable right that's determined by the trust relationship that you have to it. And that's usually determined by whatever contract gave you a right to the property in the first place, whether it be your driver's license that allows you to engage in commerce on the roadways, or it be the certificate of title and registration that you filed that gave your property over to the state, and then they gifted it back out to you in a usufructuary capacity, which means you only have the right to use it, you don't own it. Okay, you have to know all this stuff. You have to be able to put it simply. I'm going way more into detail than you ever would be able to do with one of these road pirates on the road, but I want you guys, you ladies and gentlemen, to actually understand. Like, you have to fully comprehend what I'm saying and be able to be adaptable in the moment with the road pirate, with this evidence, and be like, look, this is what you're doing, dude. You're literally committing inland piracy. You are. That's absolutely, it's a violation of your own Patriot Act, because Patriot Act doesn't apply to me, but damn sure applies to you. And inland piracy in there is one of the crimes that are listed in the Patriot Act. And you, sir, are committing it right now. Yes, that's a fact. So, all right. So Congress does not assume to deal with the people of the several states, only federal citizens, or as they call them, taxpayers and not non-taxpayers, right? And they are neither the subject nor the object of revenue laws, right there. So the instant suit is not to restrain assessment or collection of taxes of Weiss, but is to enjoin trespass upon the property of the plaintiff. So see, now she can go after him at law too for trespass, but upon the property of the plaintiff, and against whom no assessment has been made, and of whom no collection is sought, because they have no jurisdictional authority over her. She's not a federal citizen. So Note 2, the taxes are not assessed against the property. This presents a widely different case than wherein the person assessed or whose property is assessed seeks to restrain assessment or collection on the theory that he or it is exempt from taxation, or that for any reason the tax is illegal. Well, this is the gray area. This is how they remain in the gray area of the Constitution, because it is illegal for them to tax the property or the income of one of we the people. However, their own creation under the 14th Amendment, their own enfranchisement that they created that exists at their mercy, and it accepts benefits, privileges, and immunities in the form of civil rights, that infant under their guardianship, they are able to use them as collateral and enforce revenue code, but not we the people, period. So you got the mortgage, you prove the mortgage. Just to recap, we proved the mortgage with 1933, okay? You can print off the law of mortgage right here, okay, and tell them that, and this is from, I believe it's Westlaw, or hold on, don't let me lie to you. Let me go down and see which dictionary this is from. West's Encyclopedia of American Law, edition 2. And it tells you they're entitled to the rents and profits of the property that has been mortgaged. So Congress mortgaged it. They're entitled to the rents and profits of the property that's been mortgaged. That's what cops are doing when they are fleecing you for the misuse of property held in trust and under administration used as collateral. Okay. Then you want to take this. That also proves that Congress and President acted jointly as proxy settlers for the sovereign people. Then the cops can be like, settler? Then you tell them settlement is the conveyance of an estate for the benefit of some person or person. So they took your right to property, which is ultimately what your estate is, and they mortgaged it. Okay, you explain this to them. Then you explain the difference between the citizenship. So you have Black's Law here. Wow, somewhere I have it. Black's Law here, where it tells you the 14th Amendment was created for the first time as citizenship of the United States. You do McDonald v. State. And then you can also print this off about the boundary stones, just to really illustrate how their jurisdictional authority, originally the people of this republic knew the danger of this commercial extension of London, what called the United States Company or Corporation, and they caged it in with boundary stones right here. So that on the boundary stone, it says on one side, jurisdiction of the United States, and on the other side, it says Maryland. So you're back in common law when you enter into this side, Maryland. But when you head into this side, you're entering into the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation. They are two separate jurisdictions. That jurisdiction, since the Civil War, has been overlaid in a permanent wartime scenario, which I can also prove. So we got that far with that. Okay, so now what we want to do, the permanent wartime scenario is proven right here. This is a 1973 Senate report. Okay, Senate report 93-549. You can look it up. This happens to be a good annotated version of it, right, or marked up. But it tells you right in the foreword, since March 9th, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. And the actual truth is, it's actually since 1861. Okay. It's been in a state of declared national emergency ever since Abraham Lincoln issued General War Order Number 1 and declared war on the Confederate Union. The corporate union declared war on the Confederate Union. And what we originally have, all states are Confederate. Still to this day, the original de jure states are Confederate, because a confederation is a type of union. It doesn't mean racist. It doesn't mean Southern. Doesn't mean redneck. It's a type of union wherein the sovereignty resides within each state and therefore within the people of those states. That's what a confederacy is. That's what the Civil War was really about, was destroying that state sovereignty, creating the 14th Amendment so they could use it to fully usurp the sovereignty of the state by usurping the sovereignty of the people of the state, by getting them to sign up to be a federal citizen. That's how they did it. So it tells you, been in a declared state of national emergency since 1933. In fact, there are now in effect 4 presidential proclaimed states of national emergency, in addition to the national emergency declared by Roosevelt in 1933. There are also the national emergency proclaimed by President Truman for the Korean conflict, Nixon, and twice Nixon, March 23rd, 70 and August 15th to 71. right? So these proclamations give force to 470 provisions of federal law. These hundreds of statutes delegate to the president extraordinary powers ordinarily exercised by Congress, right? And so it tells you that later on down here, it says that to varying degrees, the Constitution is and has been suspended, right? But what they're not telling you is that is only for federal citizens. You can be one of the people of the states and be outside of their territorial jurisdictional overlay, which is done by the zip code, social security zones, Federal Reserve districts, and they've got a multitude of layers, but they all require your consent and contract to be in those jurisdictions. Okay, so we prove that. Now, this brings us to the next point, where the authority for the license even comes from. Okay, well, I got this slide, but not that. We want to go to this Trading with the Enemy Act, right? So Section 5B of this act, right, is the important part we're concerned with. And this is what gives rise to the driver's license ultimately. And I'll show you. So we go down to, let's see, what section are we at here? Section 3, 4, 5. Where's 5? 5B? No, not there. 5. Okay, Section 5 right here. All right, Section 5B is right here. All right. It says that, Section B is here, that the president may investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe by means of licenses or otherwise any transactions in foreign exchange, right? And it says export or earmarkings of gold, silver coin, or bullion or currency, transfers of credit in any form, which is what Federal Reserve notes are. They're transfers of credit in foreign exchange, technically. But they'll never say it's foreign. Oh, it's USD. No, it's no. Federal Reserve's a foreign corporation, but okay. Anyway, so, but look here, in this one from 1917, it says, other than credits relating solely to transactions to be executed wholly within the United States. So this in 1917, when they first passed this act, right, they excluded the United States from this, the president being able to prescribe licenses for transactions and credit, basically, right? And that's what I'm skipping through all the gibbity gook and just giving you the cut and dry. The president can regulate and order or prescribe licenses for any transactions in foreign exchange, right? Transfers of credit in any form. So just transfer. It doesn't even have to be foreign exchange. Just transfers of credit in any form. He can issue a license or prescribe a license for that. That's why they say that driving happens in commerce. Now, but this excluded the United States here in 1917. So now we have to pop over to 1933, the Emergency Banking Relief Act, where, look, the very first thing he does is it says that, okay, so the subdivision B of Section 5 of the Trading with the Enemy Act is amended and hereby, or as amended, is hereby amended to read as follows. And this is what they changed. So you go and you read it, and it says, during the time of war or during any other period of national emergency declared by the president, which the president just declared a state of emergency again yesterday, and they always have to continually declare these states of emergency, right, to keep this whole artificial commercial system going. And keep claiming this extraordinary wartime power that the president's had since Abraham Lincoln. Okay, it says declared by the president may, through any agency that he may designate or otherwise investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations. So any agency that he may designate, that's the Department of Motor Vehicles now, right? As he may be, and so under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe by means of licenses or otherwise, any transactions in foreign exchange or transfers of credit between or payments by banking institutions as defined by the president, and export, holding, melting of gold. And then now remember when it said except those occurring wholly within the United States, now he changed it and said by any person within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Boom. That's where the Secretary of State claims the authority or the DMV, depending on what state you're in, claims the authority to demand that you have a license to quote unquote drive, because it's commercial activity, right? And the commerce is exchanging of credit or debt. Debt and credit are two sides of the same coin, right? So the person who gives it is the creditor. The person who receives it's the debtor. But credit and debt, so you can look at Federal Reserve notes as credit, or you can look at them as debt, and both are accurate and the same. Just depending on, you know, who you're talking about in relation to the Federal Reserve note. So that right there gives them the authority to demand a license, or to prescribe a license, because we are in a permanent wartime situation, and it's considered, and so you're considered to be essentially sort of like a bank, right, or a savings association, but just don't even worry about that. You're considered to be dealing in transactions of transfers of credit between or payments by banking institutions. And so they demand, or he prescribed, that you obtain a license from his administrative agency in order to be able to engage in commerce on the roadways. Do you have any questions, Mojo, or anything?
Not on what you're just going over. I'd like to add something a little later on, but keep going, guy. You're spot on.
All right, let me see who we got in here just so I can say hi to. We got Theo Shen showed up. We got Ryan McVeigh's in here. Anonymous player. He says he's a New Jerseyan. That's exactly right. Fozzie says, interesting. Hate that website. Scott, New York City showed up. Can see the internet become, yeah, they're already trying to issue licenses for the internet, and frickin', where was it, like Australia? Hey, you guys don't crucify me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I read the story, but I think it's Australia. They're trying to force people to get a license or something to that effect. I know they license having a TV in England now. You know why they don't do none of that crazy shit here? Second Amendment. That's why. Same reason that the well, shit, I forget the guy's name, but one of the Japanese officers said that they didn't invade mainland America, United States during World War II, because behind every blade of grass there'd be an American with a gun. Well, it's the same reason that they don't try to do that crazy shit yet. But they are trying to institute their AI governance as we speak, right, and trick you into it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard a few years back where the UK was trying to make the internet a subscription base.
Interesting.
Pay a monthly subscription just to get on the internet, let alone your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'm sure they're trying to look into how to charge you to breathe, honestly. But, you know, it's a carbon tax every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's called carbon tax.
Yeah, every time you exhale, it's 25 cents, right? Just watch.
Yeah, they already have a carbon tax in Canada.
So we got Hi, says, Jersey girl here, born and raised, but my surname's from Michigan. Family line of farmers that go back to the early 1800s, possibly earlier. It's awesome that you know your family line. That's fantastic. Peg's Place, good to see you. Good to see you. And of course, Kevin is a diplomat plate. Whoops, hold on. What happened? Freeze up. Are you guys there? Can you hear me, Mojo? What the hell?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I can hear you.
My whole everything's frozen. It's very weird. Okay, maybe we got some action. Where are we at here? Huh. Well, this is interesting. Weird. Well, that's no good. Of course, it's because I was on a roll. That's why. I don't like that. So let's see if we can get this something working here. Damn it. I can't even, can I touch the screen and move anything? Can I click? Mojo. No?
Yes. I can hear you.
Weird. I cannot do anything. Hold on a second. Let me try something. I might drop out. Hold on. What in the is going on? I might have to restart for a second, guys, and come back in. Wow. What the frick? I think maybe, like, I can't move the mouse or anything. Like, I can't touch the screen and move anything. I can't change. No, I have a touchscreen laptop. I can't do anything on it. Yeah, I might have to restart it and come back in. So carry the torch for me for a second, Mo. Just try to figure this thing out. All right, let me try this. This is crazy. I can't even shut it down.
Oh, that's strange. Control Alt Delete. Maybe you're gone now. I hope everybody understands what Ryan has been saying. If anybody has any questions, I can try and answer them. Oh, hey, Corbett, Armin, Miss Valley, always a pleasure. Miss Peg's Place, and Scott NYC, Catch 22. And double I. Ooh. Saint Frog Dog. And Theo. Dono Paz.
All right. Well, we're back now. That was pretty weird. Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
All right. Yeah, my entire everything froze up. Sorry about that, guys.
It's usually me that drops out.
No, that's never happened before. Like I could see everything. I just couldn't. Like I would shut the laptop, and usually that would shut off my screen share because I got dual screens. And I shut my laptop, and the screen stayed on. Like it was just stuck, there. So, not really sure what all that was about. But, anyways, back to what I was saying. So we'll reshare this here screen. Okay. So it's the wartime scenario that allows them to regulate the use of property, or that allows them to demand the licensing. Now, what is the definition of license? License is permission to do something that is unlawful. So what are they saying when you're getting a license? And it is actually true, which is how they're able to force you to have the license as a federal citizen. They're saying that it is unlawful for you to engage in commerce on the roadways without permission. And it's because what we're using as currency is actually unconstitutional and unlawful, for example. So, all right, we'll recap a little bit here. So you had the, go ahead.
I'm just saying, and to getting that permission, you have to consent to use it as the way they lay out and the way they tell you.
Right. Well, they already do that as a 14th Amendment citizen, because the 14th Amendment citizen is literally like a child in the custody of the
Papa government.
Papa government. Yeah, daddy government. That's absolutely what it's called, parens patriae. So, all right, let me reload these pages, apparently. Yeah. Whoops. All right, so moving on. So you got the mortgage, 1933 definition of mortgage. You can print out the definition of settler, maybe the boundary stones if you want. McDonald v. State shows that you do not have to be a United States citizen. One may be a citizen of the state and yet not a citizen of the United States, right? And we've got Hempcrete Bear. Good to see you, man. to see you. Oh, and we got Corbett joined us. Yeah, I know you've been busy planning to move and stuff, man. So, let me see if I can go back up to catch his question. So, a diplomat plate. Okay, so he says, is a diplomat plate considered advertisement, which may be considered conveying you probably? So, well, okay. What I mean by commercial advertisement is that it's presenting an account number to let the cop create an attachment to. So the cop gets behind your car and he can punch in that account number, and he can automatically bring up your entire legal entity identification, which is attached to your Social Security trust. And he wants to create an attachment to that for whatever citation. They call it a citation because that's all. You're not breaking the law. You're not, basically, you're presumed to be under contract to adhere to these regulatory policies. And he's citing the policy that you're in violation of as federal personnel. That's what he's doing. It's what you have to try to get the dummy to understand, right? And that's what I'm trying to help you be able to do. So giving notice. So would you consider giving notice to local PD on your intent to travel? So once you file your claim, absolutely. And especially once we do the private express trust that we're working on in the Jurist Society, absolutely. Serve them with both those, a copy of the trust arrangement, right, which you don't need their permission for, and also a copy of the fact that you've claimed your estate, you've renounced your 14th, the presumption that you're a 14th Amendment citizen, which you've never actually consciously agreed to. You've been coerced and misled by misrepresentation of material facts into believing that it was necessary to that it was mandatory that you be a United States citizen. When, as we've seen right here, McDonald v. State, one may be a citizen. One may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. Boom, it's right there, black and white. So McDonald v. State, you don't have to be. And you need to, so if you're going to send them a notice, I'd send them the notice with all of this evidence too, because that's the whole point. You know, one of the most powerful cases that shows what the true original situation of the people under the law of the land, which the law of our land is common law with unalienable rights, right? So one of the most powerful pieces of case law that we can use is this, and you can go to Chisholm v. George. You can find it on Justia or anywhere. Print it off, right? Well, don't print off the whole. It's a pretty big case. I mean, you can print off the whole case, but what you want to do is you want to keyword find. Whoops, spelled that wrong. E-I-G. Whoops. R-E-I-G. Yeah. All right. So sovereign, right? Just type in sovereign, sovereignty devolved. Just do sovereignty devolved. So, and then boom, it'll take you right to the pertinent. You want to print this portion of it right here. And so it says that at the revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, unless the African slaves among us may be so called, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. Now he goes through and says that from the differences existing between feudal sovereignties and governments founded on compacts, which is an agreement, contract, which is what the Constitution is, it necessarily follows that their respective prerogatives must differ. Sovereignty is the right to govern. A nation or state sovereign is the person or persons in whom that resides. In Europe, the sovereignty is generally ascribed to the prince. Here, it rests with the people. There, the sovereign actually administers the government. Here, never in a single instance. It works for us. We don't have to administer it. That's what we hire them for. Our governors are the agents of the people, and at most stand in the same relation to their sovereign in which the regents in Europe stand to their sovereigns. That's the most powerful part. You are beneath us. You're above the 14th Amendment public chattel, yeah, because you made that persona. You wrote that role for people to adopt if they want to. And when they do, they become a subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The people are not subject to anything other than common law, the laws of the Creator. Right? Do not violate someone's free will. So You want Chisholm v. Georgia to help illustrate that point. So you print this. I've went through and printed all these, and then what I do is I paperclip them together in an organization of like, okay, this is the mortgage, this is the 14th Amendment, this is the original sovereignty of the people, this is the Trading with the Enemy Act that shows the wartime, and I'll paperclip all the documents that go with each subject that I need to convey to the road pirate to get him to understand what it is that he's actually trying to do, that he's being a pirate, right? That's how you do it. So now the next case you want on top of Chisholm v. Georgia is Hale v. Henkel. Okay, so Hale v. Henkel says that, where are we at? Whenever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, yep, right here. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business, meaning your ID or anything, if you haven't committed a crime, look, so, or to open his doors to an investigation, so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom. See, that's the catch. That's why I made that short. If you accept these benefits, they enslave you. That's why he specifically, this judge says he receives nothing therefrom, so he owes no duty. But if you do receive something from the state, then you do owe a duty to the state. That's the catch with the benefits that seem, and that short didn't seem to get as good of a reception as the other ones. And I think it might be a little bit too much for people can't, you gotta hear this over and actually like study it for a long period of time to really see how they've used the scheme of philanthropy and charity and benefits to enslave everyone, right? Because it's an operation of common law. Natural operation of common law is that when here, I got it right here, is that a state of dependence will inevitably oblige the inferior to take the will of him on whom he depends as the rule of his conduct, not indeed in every particular, but in all those points wherein his dependence consists. Now, if your very existence as a 14th Amendment persona, right, as a 14th Amendment trustee exists as part of a trust created by the federal corporation, then your entire existence is dependent on that corporation. Therefore, you take on the will of that corporation as the rule of your conduct. And that is expressed in U.S. code and then state statutes and codes under the Buck Act that reflect U.S. code, because you are considered a foreigner to your own state. You are considered a foreigner to your own state. This is another one. I've actually printed this out. I'm glad I thought of it. I don't know why I didn't already have it up, but I'm glad I do. Or I'm glad I thought of it so that I can pull it up for you guys. This is a book called Elementary Lawsmith. Okay. Very cool book, and it should pop right open to the page. Yep. So, well, close to the page, right? Customary law, international law, sovereignty. We want to do the members of a state. There it is. Okay. A member of a state may either be a citizen occupying the status entitled citizenship, or he may be a resident alien occupying the status designated by the title resident. Now, when was the last time, Mojo, you heard a governor say New York citizens or Michigan citizens or Florida citizens? When was the last time you heard that?
Not too often. They're always residents.
Mm-hmm. Not too often. I've never heard it. Governor Bitchmer, Cuntmer, whatever you want to call her, Whitmer, she says Michigan residents, right?
Right.
So what does that mean? It means foreign. It means you're a resident alien. That's what, that's what it tells you right here. A member of a state may either be a citizen occupying the status entitled citizenship, or he may be a resident alien occupying the status designated by the title residence. A citizen is a permanent member of the state, owes its allegiance at all times, and is entitled to its permanent protection, whether he is at home or abroad. The status of his membership, citizenship, is distinguished by its permanent and personal nature, and may be determined by the place of his birth or by the nationality of his parents, which is jus soli, the law of the soil, or jus sanguinis, which is the law of the blood. Now, a resident alien, on the other hand, is a person residing within a state other than the state of which he is a citizen. He owes the state of his sojourn allegiance and is entitled to the protection during his stay. So that's what a United States citizen is. The 14th Amendment citizen is a resident alien to the state because he's a citizen of the United States, which is located in the District of Columbia. We can prove that. This is actually another one I keep with me too. Is UCC 9, location of debtor. So it's 9-307. Pull this up and you go down. You can print this whole thing right here, right? 9-307. Yeah, we got it. And you go down to H. So you go down to EFG, HI, H. Location of the United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. So if you're a United States citizen, what are you a citizen of?
The District of Columbia, and that makes you an alien in every other state, as you talked about.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So that's another reason that the police officer thinks he has the right to regulate your property and to create an attachment to your trust and generate securities, right? The whole name of the game is get an account number, right? What do you mean I went into the weeds, Kevin? What are you talking about? I didn't go into the weeds. They sabotaged me. It's a conspiracy. They attacked my computer. I don't know. They probably did. I've never had that happen. That's just some weird shit. So anyways, the United States is located in the District of Columbia. That is an important point, right? And that is why you are a resident alien. And that's why you hear every governor. Oh, we lost Mojo for a second. It's popping back up. That's why every governor of every state will only ever refer to their quote unquote constituents as residents. You'll never hear them say citizens. You'll never hear Alaska citizens. You'll never hear Californian citizens. You'll never hear Washington citizens. None of those things. All right. You'll only ever hear resident, because you must necessarily be a foreigner whose sole purpose of residency is to engage in commercial enterprise on behalf of your home state, being the District of Columbia, in the Federal Reserve security scheme. Okay, that's the situation. So, Sergeant Frog Dog says, yeah, I'm just going to look for the actual location of the name United States. The only thing that you'll find is somewhere in the District of Columbia or an unoccupied location in the DC. No, I right here, it's in the UCC. They tell you where it's at. The location of the United States located in the District of Columbia. It's right there, black and white. Yeah, print this off and have it, oh, you presume me to be a United States citizen, so I'm a resident of Michigan, right? You have no idea what any of those words mean. Here, let me help you out, you fucking clown. Look. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. Where are we at right now? We're in Michigan, or wherever you may happen to be at. Yeah, right? And I am not federal chattel. I'm not public chattel. I'm one of we the people. Oh, you're not a United States citizen. I've had a cop say that you're not a United States citizen. What are you then? I'm one of the people of Michigan, right? One of the people above you, you know? That. So anyway, you gotta have that fine line though of knowing the temperament of the cop and not getting yourself shot. But you gotta convey this information. This is the most important part. You have to convey this information. There is no silver bullet. Anybody who tells you there's a silver bullet is lying to you. And if you do not know that now, you will find it out down the road when you get hemmed up because you thought there was a silver bullet. What you have, it's every interaction with the policy enforcement officers and the banks pretending to be courts is a chess match. You have to know what they're doing, which is what I'm teaching you in this whole episode right here. And I'm teaching you how to prove it simply with these documents that you print off and you keep together in a packet. Okay, so that's the location of the debtor. Right now, back to Hale v. Hinkle, because there's a very important point. So receives nothing therefrom. Right? He owes no such duty to the state since he receives nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his life and property, right? Which is still, that's actually wrong. That's up to you to do. That's not the state's responsibility. If they do it, then again, you're under what, Mojo? Administration.
Right.
Yes, you're under administration because you need a daddy government. You can't protect yourself. That's the point. So, all right. Now this next part is very good. It says his rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state. So your rights existed, like your right of locomotion, existed way before the state ever even existed. Way before this, way before our country in general ever existed, right? And way before any government ever existed. Because governments are formed by us. Just as Jefferson said, the just powers of government are derived from the consent of the governed. Well, here in this country, right, or in this republic, we are above the government. The only thing that can deprive us of these, so right here where he says, and can only be taken from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution, which means by a jury of your peers. The word peer does not mean equal, as we are taught as we're kids. The word peer does not mean equal. I'll give you an example. If you want to look up the ancestry of the royal lineage of Europe, you go to a website called Burke's Peerage, because peer means sovereign. It does not mean equal. Now, they can be your equals if everyone's sovereign, and that's what it means when they say you're entitled to a jury of your peers, right? But those peers have to be sovereign. The court, the state, they cannot trump up charges against you because they do not have an existence in fact. They're a corporation. You can't injure them, right? Like, you cannot violate their free will. So let's break this down. What are they doing when they pull you over? Okay, Mojo, I'm going to let you try to answer this one real quick. And Mojo's a part of the Jurist Society. So, what are they doing when they pull you over for not having a license plate? What are they doing?
They're trying to enforce their code and create an account so they can attach a bond basically against it to creating a debt note.
So yes, essentially, yeah, they're trying to create an attachment to the underwriting trust, the Social Security trust, which your driver's license is attached to, your license plate is attached to, so they can generate commercial paper. But I mean, so they're saying that if they say, well, why don't you have a license plate on your car? And you say, what crime have I committed? And they say, well, you don't have a license plate. It's against the law. And you say, no, it's not against the law. It's against code, right? And they say,
what makes you think I need a license plate on my car?
Well, so they're going to say it's code. The problem here is the fundamental thing in the cop's mind where he doesn't know the difference between law and code, right? He doesn't understand that law isn't written. It's only written about. That's what common law is. And then statutes, codes, decrees, rules, whatever else, canons, those are all just regulation of property held in trust. They're just regulation of property held in trust. That's all everything else is regulation of property held in trust. You have the law, which none of us made or wrote. No man wrote, cannot be written, right? Can only be written about. And then you have everything else, which is just the regulation of property. Pure communism, a central bank is necessary to create communism because you have to indenture the entire nation to that bank in order to place all the property in trust controlled by the state under administration. That's communism. That's how they do it. It's that simple. It's that simple. And you attack the nexus of where they presume you to be under administration. So what is going on when the cop pulls you over without a license plate? I'll tell you. He is trying to cause you financial injury like a pirate for not giving your property to the state to use as collateral for the public debt of a foreign corporation. That is actually what's happening. Let that sink in.
That sounded good. Repeat that.
He is trying to cause you financial injury for not giving the right of your property to the state, the controlling interest of your property to the state through registration, which is what creates the license plate. And when you register something, you give the controlling interest of whatever is being registered to whomever it is being registered with. So when you register your property, you're giving the regis, meaning like regal, crown, right? register to give to the crown, you're giving the controlling interest to them. So when he pulls you over for not having a license plate, he's trying to cause you financial injury. And you can tell him this: you're trying to cause me financial injury for not giving the right of my property to the state to be used as collateral held in trust for the debt of a foreign corporation. That's what you're trying to cause me injury for. I've committed no crime. I've hurt nobody, right? I haven't violated anybody's free will. I haven't stole from anybody, nothing. I have not violated law. There is no crime here. What you are trying to do is you're trying to pillage me for not giving my property to the state to use as collateral for the debt of a foreign corporation. He goes, what do you mean a foreign corporation? Say the United States is a foreign corporation to Michigan. Use my example. The United States is a foreign corporation to Michigan. No, it's not. I said, well, yes, it is. And then what do you do? Right? What do you do? What do you bring up? You go like this. Bam, you've got this printed out. Location of the United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia, right? You can go, bam, with the Black's Law, boom, created, right? Created a citizenship for the first time of the United States as distinct from that of the states. Boom, you can pull up McDonald v. State. Boom, one may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. Now, the United States is a foreign corporation. You can have this printed out. Boom, right? The United States of America on gov.uk, because it's a commercial extension of London. And it tells you it was notified on the 3rd of July, 1776. So it is the very same United States that we are talking about today, right? Because it was last notified on the 18th of January, 2025, right? Going all the way back to 1776. It has always been a commercial extension of London and has now expanded its jurisdictional authority through conquest, right? And territorially occupying the several states after the Civil War to obtain this de facto jurisdiction that it's trying, because originally, and then boom, you can even bring this up, because originally this bastard was supposed to be right here, caged into this 10 square miles, never to leave, never to have any authority outside of this at all, unless it's a federal conquered territory through some sort of conquest or agreement like Puerto Rico, Guam, but within the states, no. And that's why on those stones, on one side, it says jurisdiction of the United States, so that you know that you're heading into a foreign jurisdiction, not common law, right? And then Maryland, and that lets you know you're heading back into common law jurisdiction. Boom. So like on one side, United States, on the other side, Maryland, it's telling you the jurisdiction. This stone, I know you guys can't see it. It literally says jurisdiction of the United States. That's what that says right there. Okay, you guys can look this up on your own. In fact, I'll link this in the chat so you guys can do your own zoom in and see that I'm telling you the truth. And that's because the United States is a foreign corporation. So when he's pulling you over for driving without a plate, what's he doing, Mojo?
Okay, I got you. He's basically in a road probably trying to establish an account so we can extort you for the use of your property that you never signed over to anybody else.
There you go. That's it. That's what he's claiming you did wrong. So now imagine this. The state is claiming when you get taken to court, when you have to go to this nisi prius, which means court of prior agreement, court of equity, to deal with this citation of public policy, right, and revenue code, and you go to court, you're going to court because you did not give the controlling interest of your property to a foreign corporation to use as collateral for a debt. That's actually what's happening. When you can explain that and you know how to prove it, they shit themselves. There's nothing they can do. So you're acting on behalf of a foreign principal, right? And you're trying to cause me injury. So you're claiming that I injured you for not giving you my property to use as collateral. How, in what world does that make sense? That's actually slavery. That's actually literally slavery is what that is. Right? How can they argue against that?
Let alone there's no injured party.
That's the point. Yeah, there's no law broken. Like, so what are you causing me injury for? You're trying to create a financial injury, right, for a pretended offense of not giving you my property to hold in trust as collateral and generate revenue from. So you're still trying to generate revenue from it, right? Even though it's not yours to generate revenue from because it's not registered. I don't have a plate on it. I never gave it to you. And I'm not a taxpayer. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm not a federal citizen. I'm one of we the people, a non-taxpayer. Okay? You cannot distrain me of my property or attempt to tax me for the debt of a foreign corporation. You have to drive that home in your mind. That is what they're doing with everything. Is they are foreign to you. They are a commercial extension of the Crown District of London. All corporations are, but especially companies like the United States and Canada, who were the East India Trading Company and the Hudson Bay Company, respectively, before they changed their name to the United States and Canada. They are chartered out of London. They always have been chartered out of London. You can prove it right here. The United States of America on gov.uk. Notified in 1770. Oops, where is that? Notified in the 3rd of July, 1776. Okay. And then last updated 18th of January, 2025. So from all the way back then to now, it has always been a commercial extension of the Crown District of London. It's chartered out of London, and it was always designed to become overinflated and bankrupted after taking control of all the citizenry as collateral for loans from a central bank. They were meant to be bankrupted so that you could place the world in trust to fulfill the papal bull unum sanctum, because both the banks and the frickin' court system are controlled by the Vatican. The judges are governed by what's called judicial canon. Canon is always the Vatican or the papacy, right? Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys real quick. Actually, I'll show you something else. So it's that we're indentured to the central banking cartel, right? So we do this right here, JewishEncyclopedia.com, right? So this is the Jewish Encyclopedia. This is about the Rothschilds in the Jewish Encyclopedia. And what we'll do is we'll do Control F and we'll say papal. And then what? There's only 5. So we'll go 2, 3. Not that one. Right here. Okay. Now we're going to zoom in. You guys have to get this. Check this out. So you know who's doing this. It is somewhat curious. It is a somewhat curious sequel to the attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds that at the present time, the latter are the guardians of the papal treasure. So this entire indenture that's been set up through the central banking system by basically giving control of the printing of currency of all nations to a private central banking cartel, overinflating the currency, then bankrupting them, and denying them access to lawful money, forever locking you in a trust relationship with your own property that can only ever be adjudicated in equity, and all equity is ecclesiastical, governed by the frickin' Vatican. It's the fulfillment of unum sanctum. To take the whole world in trust, subject to the Roman pontiff for salvation, who's the vicar of Christ, acting as his proxy in Christ's absence. Literally, when Brandon Joe Williams sits there and tells you, of all people, right, of all people, because he doesn't even like that he has to admit it, that this is all rooted in the Bible, you better fucking believe it's all rooted in the Bible. Every last bit of it is rooted in the Bible. All right? And you see right here that the Rothschilds are the guardians of the papal treasure. So what's that mean? The papal treasure is the bankroller for the banking system. They are the ones that underwrite the public charitable trust. So when Congress mortgaged your estate, and then a couple of years later created the Social Security Act, which created an underwriting investment account that promises your future sweat equity as a security for any commercial paper debts that are created, right, from an attachment to that estate through your driver's license or whatever else, right? And they can generate mortgages, like even going to the gym. Literally, this is how the whole system is. It's generating debt off of debt, off of debt, off of debt, off of debt, all linked back to your Social Security account. When you go sign up for a gym membership, you give over power of attorney to the gym to be able to bundle and mortgage your subscription. I was just reading a lease agreement from somebody who needed my help, and we were able to get it all sorted out with him not fixing his AC and all that stuff. I had him send a notice of intent to basically hire a private contractor and deduct it from the rent according to their own statutes. And immediately, boom, he got a frickin', he said, oh yeah, we'll be there in just a couple days. You know, boom, August 5th, we'll be there. As soon as he sent that notice. All right. So his lease agreement says you give power of attorney to whatever the leasing company is, and to mortgage your lease. That so they create another security on your security of all these things that have not happened, these future obligations, because future obligations, negotiable instruments, are the currency now. There is no money. You can't buy anything. You can only purchase, which is done with negotiable instruments and always has strings attached to it, liens placed on the property. Whatever obligations are on the negotiable instrument, which is actually your trust indenture on the Federal Reserve note, is transferred to whatever you purchase with it when you're a 14th Amendment citizen. See, now when you claim your estate, like we do in the Jurist Society, you say any use of Federal Reserve notes is done under duress and without prejudice because you cannot exercise your unalienable rights to life, liberty, and property and the security of those things without using them. Society has been engineered as such that it is required for you to exercise your unalienable rights. You have to use them. Then it's done so with under duress and without prejudice. You put that shit on the record. Yeah, so there's no liens on my stuff. You just stole everything from us unlawfully. And you're not allowed to do that. And they know that. They need you to not ever know that United States citizenship is voluntary. And I tell you guys all the time, this is the nexus. You pull the United States citizenship out and the whole tower collapses. Some researchers I've found call the 14th Amendment the Pope's Holy Roman 14th Amendment, which I think is hilarious and fitting. Because it is. It is the Pope's Holy Roman 14th Amendment. You know, the Pope was behind the Civil War the entire time. The papacy was. Right? And Abraham Lincoln literally said this. But I'm getting off into the weeds now, as Chris said. So, signed beneficiary. What do you mean that? What do you mean by signed beneficiary? Huh. All right, you'll have to elaborate. Sergeant Frog Dog says, I have been traveling for 8 years now and have only received one citation for no license and was found not guilty. And I live in one of the worst states for this, Ohio. And that's a success story right there. Boom. That's exactly right. And Ohio is really, really, really bad. I'm just north of Ohio. I have to drive through Ohio to pretty much get anywhere else. And it is freaking wretched. Those cops are terrible. They're awful. They're actually one of the very few cops that are worse than Michigan. And good on you, man. And so you're more than welcome to click the link and come up and share some of your experience if you want. But you have to know what you're doing. You have to be able to explain this because, and let's be realistic, the odds of getting the cop who was hired based on his low IQ, right? Because that's what they hire him for. To get the cop to actually learn law on the spot on the side of the road, yeah, you probably got like an 80-20% chance of doing it. But you might be able, he's not going to learn it, but you might be able to, because you know what you're talking about, you can explain it well enough, you can understand that you know what you're doing, there's a good chance he'll leave you alone. And if he doesn't, then when the prosecutor sees all this evidence and you start saying this stuff to them, right? When they say, state your name for the record, and you go, I come before this court, having been found to be living, and I'm the sole heir and executor of the res defendant estate. This estate's not under administration. I'm here to clear up this confusion by special appearance. And you have all of this stuff with you, right? Well, not this. You don't want to explain this. But when you got like Hale v. Hinkle, Chisholm v. Georgia, and all that with you, right? Big, big difference. Big, they don't want to mess with you because you know exactly what they're doing. You know exactly what they're doing. And that's something they cannot abide. So, like this. So this is another example, which you don't want to take this particularly as evidence because this was written by somebody, but he knows exactly. I've verified this and everything he says in it. It's 100%. Well, I know it's true because I can prove all this stuff. So he tells you in 1935, the government instituted Social Security. The Social Security Board then created 10 Social Security districts, creating a federal area, which covered the several states like an overlay. It did. And in 1939, the federal government instituted the Public Salary Tax Act of 1939, which all people who have a Social Security number, Social Security is a deferred retirement benefit, and it establishes you as a federal franchise. Okay? as a franchise, which is they could never institute income tax against the people of the several states, but they can institute income tax against corporations and franchises. That's how they're able to do it. That's what they do. And so when they instituted this Public Salary Tax Act, it allowed the states to get in on the action and basically administer the foreign resident aliens of the United States corporation for profit. And so the states were more than happy to be like, okay, you guys are just residents now. You guys are all just residents now, and we're going to sit here and fleece the shit out of you every opportunity that we get, because that was the intention the entire time. That was the intention the entire time. So you got anything, Mojo, on this?
Not on that. Very good.
All right. So let's see. So we went through mortgage. So you explain the mortgage, you explain the difference between the 14th Amendment citizen. Then we've got those court cases that establish you as, well, as above the government, especially Chisholm v. Georgia, which was, where was that? I had that. That one is one of the best examples, best one to use. Can't remember. Was it a PDF? Yeah, it's right there. This one. So this is the original, right? So you show this goes all the way back to, I believe it's 1793, I want to say. Yeah, it's right there, 1793. This is the original Chisholm, right? But it's easier to print it off of Justia. So again, just to reiterate for people who may have just joined, right? That right here. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved upon the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, unless African slaves among us may be so called, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in sovereignty. Now, this is the important part. From the differences existing between feudal sovereignties, meaning of Europe, right, where we talk about all the properties under administration gifted out under title, and that title comes with strings. It's a persona that individual adopts when they accept the title, and they have to perform the obligations of the trust. That sums up feudalism simply. All right, so feudal sovereignties and governments founded on compacts, it necessarily follows that their respective prerogatives must differ. Sovereignty is the right to govern a nation or state. Sovereign is a person or persons in whom that resides. In Europe, the sovereignty is generally ascribed to the prince. Here it rests with the people. There, the sovereign actually administers the government. Here, never in a single instance. Our governors are the agents of the people and at most stand in the same relation to their sovereign in which regents in Europe stand to their sovereigns, meaning they are beneath you. They borrow your sovereign authority to be able to do anything, and anything they can do, you can do. This is a fact. They have brainwashed people so badly with the education system and taking away your knowledge of law, separating you from the creator, and just all around, then not to mention all the other hoaxes that they've like the evolution, making you think you evolved from pond scum and just crazy shit that makes you think you're on an insignificant speck of dust whirling in a vast expanse of nothingness, and that government is the highest authority. And they literally have convinced the majority of people that this is the case. And that's crazy. So, all right. Now, before I shut this down tonight, because this isn't going to be too long of a stream, but what I do want to say, so we went through this. These are the court cases that you got to have. You guys digest this information. Okay. And then I'll bring the second part of the information that you should print out. But this is the very first part, is to attack the jurisdictional authority of the motor vehicle code. Right there on the side of the road, immediately, with evidence. Cut its throat. Done. Right? And metaphorically, YouTube talking about the jurisdictional authority, not any person or individual. So just to clear that up so we don't get struck. But you just annihilate that jurisdictional authority right on the side of the road by printing out and knowing, comprehending, and being able to explain everything that I just said to you. Because that is the case. You have the absolute right of locomotion to move from point A to point B unimpeded right, in a private capacity without disclosing any of your affairs and business to anybody, whether it be on the back of your vehicle in the form of a license plate or it be when you're asked to, right? But even disclosing information on the back of your vehicle that somebody can search up and find your personal information, that is a violation of your Fourth Amendment. That in itself is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. The problem with being a 14th Amendment citizen is the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to you. No other amendment applies to you except for the 14th Amendment. I like to call the 14th Amendment a contractual black hole, that once you're that public chattel, that United States infant under guardianship and parents patriae, where government is your daddy, right? Now you don't have access to common law rights or any kind of none of that. What you are is you are going to do what you're told under the 14th Amendment. And that's determined by all the contracts that they coerce you into entering, such as the driver's license, registration, right? All those. So that's what you attack. So let's see here. Yeah, Hi says it's very curious to me why so many elites have dual citizenship with Israel. I mean, it shouldn't be. You kind of get the idea of what's going on there, right? Who control? Well, we just looked at the Jewish encyclopedia. So, and believe it or not, that's what I say when it's not the Jews. Zionists, you could say, right? It is, but really, what it is they all work together, and they all have a different part, and that's why you see this, that the Rothschilds are the guardians of the papal treasure, but you better believe that the Jesuits are above them. The Jesuits are absolutely above the Rothschilds, right? And so, but the Jesuits have a lot of Jews in them also, but they're not all Jews. And that's the whole thing is so you can't just say, oh, it's Jews, right? Because it's not. It's Zionist. You could say it is that for sure. It's a medley of just basically wealthy elite people that have the insatiable desire to dominate their fellow man. That's why, and for some reason that has existed since the dawn of existence. I mean, look at how many people throughout history you've had try to conquer the world. And now this is the closest that they've ever been to actually doing it. And if they get to switch over this new money system and it becomes permanent, they will do it. It's a fucking trick. And I'm going to show you guys that before we get off here tonight too. But before I do, I want to show you. I have not watched this, so let me reshare it so we have some audio. This is a Moor. Now, the interesting thing about Moors, they're black supremacists, obviously, but they do tend to know the law decently. They don't know, I haven't come across too many of them that know the entire system of administration like I'm explaining it, but they know enough to be a pain in the ass. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the Moors were some of the original people that were already here when the European nations settled the Americas, but I haven't been able to pin that down concretely. There's a book called The 0% I have that has some compelling evidence, but it's not going to get into that too much. But however, I haven't watched this, so let's see what this guy's technique is. This is an example of somebody, supposedly, of course, because I haven't watched it, getting away with not having their slave tag, their permission from daddy government. So let's see what we have here. Did I let me just make sure. I reshared the window. Yeah, okay, good. Or not the window, the tab. Okay, turn on some volume. Go.
I'm on my way to work, pulled over. Let's see what this is about.
Is it?
Yeah.
The reason I'm pulling you over, man, I was right behind you. We were doing 80 and 55.
Okay.
You have license, registration,
No, I
insurance?
don't.
You don't?
I like that.
Why not?
Because I don't need.
I already like that. You were going 80 and a 55. Okay. So? What are you talking? You can't tell me how to use my property. Did I hurt somebody? Did I hit somebody I didn't see back there? No? Oh, well, okay. Then what are you talking about? Because I haven't hurt anybody, and your arbitrary regulation of property doesn't apply to me. Yeah, so he must know that to react that way. Let's go.
To travel. I'm a Moorish American national traveling to Morocco. I don't have to have. There you go. Once you get that to y'all.
What's the deal, man? Can you roll this window down?
No, you can read that right there.
He's a little
I'm
hostile.
talking to you. Am I not? Can you not hear me clear enough? And you're also being video and audio recorded.
I understand. That's
All
fine.
right. If you read that, you will.
Okay, you don't have a license plate on your vehicle.
If you read,
you don't have driver's license.
if you read the paper, it will answer all of your questions.
What is this paper?
Explains to you policy enforcers that I have the inalienable right to travel without a driver's license, insurance, or state issued valid driver's license.
All right, so with this cop, a perfect example, because I imagine many of you are of a European or some other descent. You probably wouldn't be able to use the Moorish American, but that is another interesting thing about I believe it's Title 8 of the USC. It does actually have a provision for American nationals that the Moors do claim was put in there for them to accommodate the fact that they were never under the United States, and that's their whole avenue. And I don't know if that's true or not. It's compelling. It could possibly be, and it is in the U.S. code. So whatever paper he has, but this opportunity you could use to start explaining to him the mortgage and the lack of jurisdictional authority because you're not a 14th Amendment, and prove it and be like, here, check this out. All right, here, I can prove it. Check this out. Check this out. Now, do you want to take this to court? You know what I mean? All right, let's keep going.
I mean, if you read the first two lines on that paper, it's on there, and it's.
Well, that's fine. I just, like I said, I don't have. You're not telling me any information. You're not telling me who you are.
I don't have.
I tell you why I pulled you over.
You're absolutely right.
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 Okay.
You pulled me over for what reason again?
Because I'm on the highway right next to you, and you're doing 80 and 55 all the way up here.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's against the law.
It's not against the law.
To speed?
As a matter of fact, do you have a supervisor to speak to?
That's 100% right. It is not against the law. It's against code, maybe even statute, right? Statute and code, but it's definitely not against the law. And statutes and codes, I cannot express this enough. And everyone has to fully digest and comprehend what I'm saying, how true this is. I can prove it. There's not a freaking lawyer on the planet that would be able to argue with me about this because I know it. I have read volumes of law, and it is true that statute, code, rules, any other sort of it's all just the regulation of property under administration. Okay? If you enter into if you enter into a state of society under a government in a subject capacity where you are a subject, like the 14th Amendment citizen is, then you are going to be regulated. And that is what the government is. It creates arbitrary rules that regulate the property under its control. Our government was the only one in history that was different, in recorded history anyway, where the people were above the government, and it took sovereign people to deprive sovereign people of their common law rights. And the government could not do that on their own. Still cannot. They can only do it to their creature, the 14th Amendment that they created. They created that persona. They created that trust. They created that trusteeship. And you adopt that and you become subject to them. And then you're subject to statutes and codes and the regulation of property. But we have a allodial title in this country, okay? Wisconsin Constitution, the original one, 1848, Article 1, Section 14 says all lands within this territory are allodial, and feudal tenures are prohibited. Allodial means absolute ownership, nobody above you, no property tax, no ordinances, none of that shit telling you to cut your grass, nothing. Nobody can, in fact, if they come on your land, you can just, you can handle that however you want. Nobody can say anything about it. So, but you got to have a notice up that says like no trespass or something. But as long as you have that notice posted, you can do whatever you want and nobody can do anything to you. And that's what real ownership is. Real ownership is I use my property the way I see fit as long as I do not harm anybody. That's law. If you harm somebody, then it's a violation of law. All crimes require a victim. So when he says that's not law, he's 100% verifiably right. Blackstone agrees with him. Check this out.
Because I'm going to exercise my inalienable right to remain silent. because you won't. I've given you the paperwork. You won't even look at it to read it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get one started.
All right.
Okay? Go ahead and get your driver's license.
Let's see how this works. I do believe the supervisor just pulled up, so I'm just sitting here waiting right now. See what they are.
I have to address this real quick. Hi says communism is satanic. That is absolutely right. In the same way that all law is rooted in the Bible, just like even Brandon Joe Williams had to begrudgingly admit, communism is the absolute inversion of God's law. And it's man usurping the authority of God, which is what they want to do worldwide. That's the point. But the main key about communism that makes it satanic is that you necessarily, the people, not the people, the persons under the communism necessarily have to be atheists, and the government is generally, of the worst sort of Satanists, like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and those guys. They love communist China, right? Well, the reason being is because the Bible frees you. Like, so there's two ways, right? You learn the law, or you study the Bible. Well, without getting into that too much, look at the Chinese Communist Party with the Bible, right? They only allow the CCP approved version of the Bible, which has many things altered or omitted from the Bible, because they know those things would threaten their dominance. So I just wanted a little side note. You're absolutely right. Hi. And then I want to address Sergeant Frog Dog. The Supreme Court has also ruled that a bill of sale is just as powerful, and he said lawful is what he meant to put, just as powerful lawful proof of complete ownership. Yeah, of course it is. You don't get a bill of sale anymore, though. You get a receipt, which is like a inventorying, right? Because you're holding something in trust. So, if you got that case law, I'd be interested. I hadn't heard that, but it stands to reason, because bill of sale is common law commerce, and that's when you're actually buying and selling with precious metals and not purchasing with negotiable instruments that have strings attached to them. So I believe that.
Hey, Ryan?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about this. When this guy asked for a supervisor, are they under any kind of commitment to actually provide a supervisor?
Mm-hmm. Most, if not all, pretty much every police department that I've come across or seen, that's in their policy. And you got to remember, statutes, codes, policies, regulations, rules, all that apply to officials and personnel, employees, franchises. Never applies to the people, because people are under law unless they contract to agree to be under the statutes, codes, regulations, rules, all that stuff. So yes, their policy, he signed up, he's a cop, he's bound to their policy. They have to bring a supervisor. I assume that's the case with his department, because most of them that's their policy. They have to supply that. When the ultimate threat, when the ultimate risk of the interaction is death, then yeah, there's a lot of insurance measures that have to at least be given lip service in a public policy document. Whether or not they actually want to abide by that is a different story. We'll see how this guy does.
What they plan on doing? 12 minutes now. I've been sitting on the side of the road. All right.
Sergeant Avila, you were asking for a sergeant?
Yes, I was. I don't see a reason why I was stopped.
The officer said that you were going 80. This is a 65-mile-an-hour zone on the highway. Were you aware of that?
That's a posted suggested speed limit.
Yep.
That's a speed limit. Not a suggested speed limit. It's a speed limit.
The limit, like this guy, so that's the point. So they hired somebody who's just smart enough to follow orders, but too stupid to realize what this man's trying to tell him is the limit. Well, okay, who decides that? And what gives them the right to decide that? Well, they only have the right to decide that if they have administrative control over the road and the property I'm traveling at. Like, are you kidding me? Right? Well, he wouldn't understand. That's why the title of tonight's show is Teaching Law to Low IQ Pirates. Let's see how well he does.
Okay.
Is that what the sign says? Speed limit?
That's what it states on the sign.
Limit, right.
Right.
So that's a state speed limit.
Okay.
Correct?
Hold on, I got to put this up here for everyone's benefit. Sergeant Frog Dog is exactly right. He says, when I buy my automobiles from somebody, I always put on the bill of sale the amount of fiat plus one $20 gold coin. Do you know why $20? I'll tell you, because constitutionally, right, any dispute over $20 is automatically subject to the common law. The $20 automatically puts it in the common law. And he uses gold because it's actual money. So he buys it instead of purchasing it, which is a huge difference. And Sergeant Frog Dog knows his stuff. Good job, man.
You are absolutely 100% correct. Right. A corporate state speed limit. You're right.
Yeah, and that's the reason why he stopped you.
Okay.
Also, you didn't have a license plate on your vehicle.
Right. So it's not required.
It's not registered in the state of Colorado.
It's not required.
I actually know how to explain this and I'm glad he brought that up because I didn't even think to tell you guys this. So the license plate the registration originated just like income tax did, and it was voluntary initially, right? The registration started the same way. It was called the Vehicle Theft Prevention Program, right? The VTPP, or what is it? The VTTP, yeah, or something. No, Vehicle Theft Prevent. Yeah, VTPP, the Vehicle Theft Prevention Program. And what it was a system of registration, obviously, without the people knowing that registration automatically conveys the controlling interest of the registered property to whomever it is being registered with. And the reason that entity gets the controlling interest is because the promise is to protect the property. Okay, so Vehicle Theft Prevention Act, that's how they introduced it, right? And they said, yeah, it was the VTPA. There you go. Anyways, so they're like, hey, you know, if you're worried about your automobile being stolen, just register it with us under the Vehicle Theft Prevention Act. And then if somebody steals, we'll issue it a VIN number. And then if somebody steals it, we'll be able to help you find it. What they don't tell you is the common law strings that are attached to accepting that sort of arrangement from the government. Now they have, since you basically could not own that property without their assistance. That's how they look at it. Like, you're worried about it getting stolen. You're afraid to own this without us being a part of it. They gain a superior interest in it when you register. But the Vehicle Theft Prevention Act was and is still voluntary. But now it's been enculturated so deeply, right? And people have been brainwashed through public education and everything. They think it's just mandatory. You've got to register your vehicle. Just like this cop saying. It's bullshit. You don't have to.
I'll let the car go by so I can.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So whenever you're traveling on the state of Colorado roadway, it needs to be registered in the state of Colorado.
That's not true, sir.
Yes, sir, it is. That's the reason why we have license plates.
If you're a corporate entity
So right there for Chris Hennis. He says, I was injured by an agent, had bad tags, but when I gave him the DL, retaliated for stating my non-commercial activity. The problem, okay, I'm going to explain exactly why that went down that way. You had tags, so that shows a contract. That's commercial advertising. You showed to be in violation of a contract. You had the license plate on your car with tags, but they're expired. So you're demonstrating that I am under this contract and I'm in violation of it. I hope that makes sense. It sucks. I went through that learning curve myself years ago. That's how they can still do that. Is because you're showing, and especially if you handed him a driver's license, now you're absolutely showing him that you are a resident, a resident alien, right? Whose sole purpose in his area is to engage in commercial enterprise on behalf of the District of Columbia as a franchise of the United States, which is the business of the District of Columbia, extension of the Crown District of London, obviously. And you gave him 2 contracts and then said, these don't apply to me as you gave them to him. That was the issue with that. Like, and so there's nothing wrong with that learning. Like, you learned a lesson, but I want you to know why that still went that way. It went that way because, well, you're saying this doesn't apply to you and you're not in commerce, but you're in a commercial vehicle and you're handing me a commercial permission to engage in commerce. Why? You know what I mean? Like, whereas this is how you handle what he's doing. I'm not giving you shit. You don't get an account number because I'm not a taxpayer under administration engaging in commerce on behalf of a foreign corporation. That's not me. Watch.
Adheres to the corporate laws, then yes, you are 100% correct. You're 100% correct.
Are you a licensed driver in the state of Colorado, sir?
I'm not licensed in any state to drive.
Okay. So in the state of Colorado,
I'm exercising my inalienable right to travel.
You're required
No, you're not.
to have a driver's license to travel on the state of Colorado roadway.
That is not true, sir, but I'm not going to, it's not an argument for the side of the road.
You either. I'm just trying to get this rectified.
As am I, because I'm on my way to work and I'm late.
My officer's just pulling you over because you're traveling 80 miles an hour and opposed to 65-mile-an-hour speed limit.
So
that's the reason why.
Yeah, what Sergeant Frog Dog's saying here is sell your auto to a private non-statutory trust. What he's talking about is a private express trust. That is the way to protect your property. The added thing is to claim your estate so that there's no question that you've rescinded you've revoked any presumption that you're a 14th Amendment citizen, that your property's not under administration. Then you place it all in a private express trust. And now you take that a step further. This is what I teach in the Jurist Society. That's what we're going through right now. You take that a step further and you put in that private express trust, which is protected by the common law of contracts under Article 1, Section 10, where no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. And what you're doing when you create that private express trust, you don't need the permission of the government. You don't need him. You just write it up. You have the natural right, common law right to contract, unlimited, just like it said in Hale versus Hinkle. You enter into this contract, and because of Article 1, Section 10, it supersedes all of their codes and statutes because it says no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation or the performance of the obligation of contracts. So you create a trust, say you place your automobile in the trust, and part of that trust indenture, so you're creating a legal person that precedes the government. So though it's not an actual one of we the people, living man or woman, this legal entity that you're creating precedes government because it arises out of your common law right to contract, which precedes government. And because of Article 1, Section 10, it still precedes government. They can't regulate it, right? And so if you put your automobile in this trust and you say this property is never to be used for commercial purposes whatsoever by any persons, individual, or entity, right? And boom, period. Then them trying to say, oh, well, you've got to register. Well, if I register it, then I'm putting it in commerce. So you're trying to force me to impair my obligation to this contract. That violates Article 1, Section 10. And there is literally probably, there is a massive plethora of case law going all the way back. And John D. Rockefeller and Carnegie and those guys, they use that specifically to keep their property safe, right? And now we can use it against them by making our property immune to their regulation by placing it in a private express common law trust, right? And if you want to learn more about that, you can join the Jurist Society. We're going through exactly that right now, step by step in detail. Aren't we, Mojo?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, it's quite clever, actually. It's very, very clever the way they set that up. So, anyways, let's get back to this.
My officer's pulling you over.
Okay.
Okay. And that's what he was trying to explain to you is that.
No, I understood that. I understood that was the reason for him, or his reason for stopping me. I understood that.
Right. So right now, all he's doing is conducting a traffic stop. So he's trying to find out who you are and explain the traffic infraction to you as to why he was stopping you. That's the only thing he was doing. So did you supply him with your name and date of birth?
No, I didn't supply him with anything. It's not required. Here, I'll give you this out as well.
Okay.
That's it.
I mean, this is Supreme Court law. So what you're saying is law that you're going.
So right there, did you supply him with your ID or any of that stuff, right? So we go back to Hale versus Hinkle, right? He owes no duty. I know you guys can't see this, but listen, he owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to invest an investigation, so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state since he receives nothing therefrom, which is what that man is establishing in this interaction. beyond, and this is wrong, actually, the protection of his life and property, because even that is not owed from the state. You can't accept that as a benefit from the state either. Otherwise, you're under guardianship. So his rights are such as existed by the law of the land, which in this republic is common law, long antecedent, which means before the organization of the state, and can only be taken from him by due process of law, which means by a jury of his peers, right? And in accordance with the Constitution. That, boom. So that's what I would hand the cop out. Did I give him my ID and all this? No, I didn't, because of this. Look, I've got this one page from Hale v. Henkel. Like, check this out. Stare decisis. It's already been decided. There's no question here. You can say, oh, that's old. I had a lawyer one time tell me that's old law. He tried to tell me that shit's old law when I showed him the 14th Amendment and all that stuff. And I looked at the lawyer. I said, dude, there's no such thing as old law. There just is law. And then there's everything outside of that, the regulation of property. And he goes, okay, you're like, he literally was like, yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah. Well, and then we continue our conversation. So you guys have to understand the distinction between those things, law and then everything else. Law cannot be written, can only be written about, and everything else is the regulation of property under administration, which requires consent or presumption, unrebutted presumption, that you are in that position of a trustee or, that's it, just a trustee. Yeah.
But I'm going by the Constitution, which you guys took an oath to, which is law in this country. It's law.
Right.
It states I don't have to identify myself. I don't have to have quote unquote state issued license plates, registration, or driver's license. I'm not driving. Driving is conducting commerce. I am traveling. Look up the definition. I'm just stating facts.
Yep.
All right.
You're certainly traveling, but the thing is, you're traveling on a state roadway.
Sir,
if you were traveling like on a rural roadway, things like that, that's certainly different.
Sir, I've run into state troopers, I run into federal agents, and the same applies. It's Supreme Court law, which is the highest law. It was the supreme law of the land.
Oh,
right.
That is fact. That's why I have private property in the back of my window. Registration.
He's absolutely right. When he told him to look up the definition, we're going to get back to this video because that's the last thing I'm showing tonight. But let's go to window. Boom. Boom. He's right. Look up the definition of motor vehicle. This is motor vehicle as defined in Title 18 U.S. Code Section 31 definitions, right? Subsection, let me look at the subsection. Subsection A, 6. The term motor vehicle means every description of carriage or other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power, and doesn't say or could be or may be, or if it was just the car itself, it would stop there, by mechanical power. Boom, stop. But no, it says and used for commercial purposes. Well, let's click on that. Used for commercial purposes. The term used for commercial purposes means the carriage of persons or property for any fare, fee, rate, charge, or other consideration, which is a benefit or detriment experienced by a contract. That's what consideration doesn't mean to think about. Like, I know that's what everybody goes, oh, that means to think about if I'm going to consider something. No, consideration is what you receive and what you give as a result of a contract. That's what consideration means at law. Or directly or indirectly in connection with any business or other undertaking intended for profit. Commercial. That's the definition of motor vehicle. Motor vehicle is a commercial term to place it under the jurisdiction of Congress under Article 1, Section 8. No questions. He's absolutely right. So I just wanted to prove that to you guys real quick. All right, let's go back.
I've been through this several times.
Okay. So what you're saying is that you don't want to supply the officer with your name or date of birth or anything like that.
I'm not required to by law.
So what you're saying is that you don't want to.
I'm not required to.
This poor dude, I kind of feel bad. I don't feel bad for the cop, and I know none of you feel bad for the Roman centurion, but I can just imagine this guy who just thinks he's doing a job 9 to 5, he don't know none of this shit. He has no idea. He has no idea about any of this shit. Then he meets this guy, and this guy's like, so he says all this stuff, and he knows what he's talking about. And now the cop's like, so you're just not going to cooperate. And so now what do I do? Because I don't even know what you're talking about. And this just usually goes entirely different. People usually just kiss my ass, but you're actually bringing up, some interesting points, that I can't really understand because he's a dumbass, right? Obviously you can hear it in his voice. He doesn't really fully understand what's going on, but he knows he is in hot water, uncharted territory right now. So
By law,
So
sir.
I'm asking you whether you want to.
My name is Tariq.
Tariq, thank you, sir. May I ask?
And I'm late to work.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. That'll be all right.
Just curious as to what your travel is. Where are you going from here?
I'm going to Longmont. I'm traveling to Longmont.
You're going to Longmont.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Here's your paperwork back. Okay.
see, I appreciate his dedication. He's late for work, but he's still sticking to his guns. He's like, I'm not going to let you create an attachment to my estate and generate commercial paper. I'm just not going to do it. It's not going to happen. You guys aren't going to pillage me. Yeah, respect, dude. Even though you're black supremacist, it's fine.
Then you can be on your way.
All right.
If you're good with, this is the officer that stopped you, just so that you know who stopped you.
Okay.
Okay. And again, like I said, it was for the posted speed limit violation, and that you didn't have a driver's license plate on your vehicle.
Okay. Thank you much.
Take care.
Boom. Yeah. That cop made
The stunts that got me banned.
Okay. All right. That guy nailed it. Nailed it, right? So, yeah, that's exactly so and that was a perfect example of what I'm talking about. That cop didn't learn anything. And see, what I'm telling you guys to do is print off the evidence that I presented and be able to hand that to him. Authoritative sources, congressional record, Black's Law Dictionary, treatise at law, gov.uk, Supreme Court. You're handing them all these authoritative sources to back up everything you're saying about his pretended jurisdictional authority over you and trying to regulate your property and generate commercial paper. And you're explaining this to him. He's probably not going to learn it. That's the title of tonight's show: teaching law to low IQ pirates. He's probably not going to learn it. But like in the instance of that cop, he knows that you know what you're talking about. Sometimes they're egotistical and just like, "Oh, I'm going to rip you out of your car." Then you comply under duress and without prejudice. That's how you do that. So you retain the jurisdictional authority to rescind that consent because you were threatened with force. That's how you deal with that, right? So then when you get with court, like, hey, your cop threatened me to rip me out of my car in front of my wife and children, right? So I complied under duress and without prejudice, but I am not that entity that you created. That's your thing. And I do not have to be, according to McDonald v. State, right? You can deal with that. You can have that. And that's the whole thing about acceptance for value that Brandon Joe Williams teaches. If you accept the benefit of being able to discharge municipal debts through the Treasury, then you still keep yourself in the trust. You're literally accepting the trust position like, okay, cool. So my job is to discharge these debts through the Treasury. So I'm under the trust and I get to be harassed and regulated and all that shit. Nope. Don't accept none of that shit. And you'd be like, hey, you have no authority to do this. And you present the evidence. So one thing, because I said it earlier in the stream, and I just want to prove it, and I forgot that I had it pulled up because I just did. But remember when I said that all states are Confederate? This is Michigan. You got to talk like one of the most libtarded commie states in the entire union. Take my word for it. I live here. Okay. Just absolutely intended on enslaving its citizenry before it even became a state. It created a probate court 1827, created a probate court. Didn't become a state till 1835, or at least get accepted to be a state in 1835. And they created a probate court for the specific purpose of taking the property of incompetent people, and started doing that, and also gave themselves the license to mortgage it. They the entire time, planned on enslaving its citizenry. So Michigan's government, not the state. I like the state. It's pretty. It's, the people are okay. But the government is one of the biggest pieces of shit on the whole face of the earth, right? Now, it's Confederate, though it had no choice but to be, because of Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution. And all states are Confederate. So right here, you can read. I don't know if you guys can read. Can I zoom in? Where's the zoom in? Hold on. Show controls. There we go. Okay. Now we'll hide controls. All right. Right here, it says that the people of the said state, if I can't highlight it, which sucks, but it says right here, if you can see my cursor, and the people of the said state are solicitous to give to her sister states. This is Michigan when they were accepted in the Union. I believe this is 1836 is when this statute's from, or this book of statutes is from. So Michigan, I'm telling you, this is Michigan, not Virginia, not Georgia, none of the southern states, right? So it says, the people of the said state are solicitous to give to her sister states and to the world unequivocal proof of her desire to promote the tranquility and harmony of the what? The what? The Confederacy. This is Michigan. The Confederacy. That's what the Civil War was really about, guys. Get your head out of the propaganda. Look at what they actually did. They took your sovereignty, made you a federal subject and trustee of your own property, right? And now, with what Trump's doing right now, and I hate to say it, the guy, I like him kind of personally. He's funny and shit, but what he's doing, he's a scumbag. He's setting up the new financial fucking digital enslavement system where it permanently locks you into that trusteeship, right? We're supposed to be a confederacy. What's the difference between a Confederate Union and a corporate union? Penhallow v. Doan's Administrators, 1795, says that when a union is Confederate and not corporate, the sovereignty resides within the state. That was the purpose of the Civil War. They wanted to make a corporate union out of the Confederate one. It says right here that Michigan wanted to promote the tranquility and harmony of the Confederacy, because we are a confederacy where the states are sovereign. The states are sovereign because the people are sovereign. The people created the states, Chisholm v. Georgia, above them, and the states decided to create a trust to represent themselves internationally, which was all just a trick because it was actually the East India Trading Company just sitting in the wings waiting to be recognized as the international face of this new confederacy where the people are sovereign. Right, so it's all a trick. The wealthy elite have. You want to blame the Jews? You want to blame all these other people? Who should really? It's the ultra wealthy people, the ultra wealthy psychopaths. You cannot be ultra wealthy. I know this personally. I have a very wealthy friend. You cannot be ultra wealthy without being a fucking psychopath and having no empathy for other people whatsoever. And that is who our enemy is, and that's who's doing this because they have an insatiable desire to be God for whatever reason. Okay, so Michigan's a Confederate state, New York's a Confederate state, every fucking state in the Union is a Confederate state, proven here, right here, live on Burn the Corporate Fiction. I'm telling you, it shows you right here, promote the tranquility and harmony of the Confederacy. This is Michigan revised statutes of 1836, no question. Okay, last thing I'm going to show you guys tonight, and I got to find it real quick. This is the new system. They're trying to make it permanent. And then we'll go ahead.
I know you're running long, Ryan, but I would like to talk a little bit about my case and brought up something that probably be good to have in people's packets.
What's that? Go ahead.
You remember, basically it was crunch time for me when I got a hold of you when I had only a couple of weeks before my first appearance. And hats off to you. You never really told me what to say. You never did. You said, here's some research, research notice of liability, research counterclaims. I was doing a lot of reading. Many of the things you brought up tonight, I had to read through and learn for myself, which hats off to you. Instead of just telling me, instead of giving me the fish, as they say, you taught me how to fish, how to do the research. So hats off to you on that. But one of the things, because we were crunched for time, I got my counterclaim filed the day before I went into court because I was running out of time. And that's the day you read it. I already had it filed, and you said I didn't mention the law of the case. Now I didn't know about it. I thought that's what I'm trying to go is get around being a sovereign. I don't want nothing to do with their law of me speeding, and that's how I was taking it wrong because I was still too naive. I didn't learn enough yet. So if you can you bring up a mega document? There's actually one titled "The Law of the Case," and I found it afterwards. If I attach certain things, like from page 24 on to page 33 or even page 34, they have case after case after case about the right to travel on there.
Right. So I would bring, but that's more like a Jurist Society. So yeah, that is the you did awesome. The only thing is that they found out that somebody was helping you and you didn't know what you know now. But the judge asked you if you could adjourn. You filed an at-law action against him for trespass on the case for maladministration of an estate that's not under administration, and it gave him pause. And he's like, "Oh shit, this guy knows what's going on," until he found out. And so the law of the case is interesting because the law of the case, it determines how people are to deal with your personal property. So everything that you own, you can make a law regarding it. That's how you create trusts, right? So like the creation of a trust is you writing the law regarding your property, and you can do a private express trust without the permission of the government. It's the same thing with the law of the case, right? But it has to be reasonable. Now, the law of the case that is in the template, it's a little bit out there. You don't want to use like, oh, okay, so for this instance, we're going to adopt the federal rules of civil procedure, but we're going to exclude this and this and this. No. So law of the case, just common law. So that's what the people that I teach, you should only ever put the law of your case as common law, because then you have the right to challenge the validity of the contract under the common law of contracts, right? How was it gained? Was it gained through knowing and knowledgeable and willful consent, or was it gained through coercion and misrepresentation of material facts? Makes a huge difference, because at common law, one makes the contract valid and one makes the contract invalid. The only law of the case we're concerned about is common law, because common law protects us if you know the law, right? But common law screws you if you don't know the law. That's how you get feudalism and everything else. That's why I have this channel. The law of the case, in your instance, should have just been the law of this case is proceeding according to the course of the common law, right? Regarding property, right? And so see attached claim. And in the acclaim that we teach in the Jurist Society, and we have people put on the record, mine's worked beautifully. It's actually fun. A big pain in my ass has been probate, and they do not want to mess with me now. So the claim itself establishes that any use of any instrument that establishes a contractual nexus, actually I might change the language to reflect that, but that's essentially what it says. Any use of any instrument that would imply a contractual nexus with the foreign corporation called the United States is used under duress and without prejudice, being as society has been engineered as such to make it so that I have to use these contracts to exercise my unalienable rights. And because they have engineered society to actually be that way, that is a negating factor, right? You cannot put sovereign. So Virginia's original Declaration of Rights, 1776, Article 4, Section 2 of the federal Constitution says all states have the right of the people of any states, right? Essentially. So Virginia's state constitution says that no one can deprive their posterity of the right to property. It says that right in Virginia's the original constitution. It says, in fact, I'm going to pull it up real quick because I got to be able to show people this. Otherwise,
if I attach these several pages of these case laws, law of the cases, I know I would have had no problem with that charge. The one right here is Hill House versus United States. It's circa 1907. But a citizen has the right to travel upon the public highways and transport his property thereon. State versus Johnson. It basically says the same thing.
Look at this. So I'm going to
But there's a
show
whole
this.
bunch of these in there.
Exactly. So this is the federal, or this is the revised code of the laws of Virginia, which they had to include their Bill of Rights, the original 1776 Bill of Rights, right? And their and the federal Constitution. So this is the federal Constitution. I got to scroll up a little bit to the Virginia Bill of Rights. Hold on, bear with me. But this is important. You guys stick around through me scrolling, not having this prepared because I just thought of it. It's important. Okay. So we're almost to the top. Okay, hold on. Nope, must have passed it. New edition, Constitution of the United States. No, it has to be. Or is it at the bottom? Revised code. It's got to be at the bottom. It is. It's at the bottom. It's how long it's been since I searched this. But I know it very well, so. So hide controls so we can get to the bottom. This is from 1819, by the way, guys. So penitentiary, right? Come on, man. Where the hell is this? Okay, does it end on that? Then what do we go up to the top? We come down. Enact. Yeah, these are all enactments. Hold on. Find it. This is important. Constitution of Virginia. Okay, there it is. That's what I wanted. Constitution of Virginia. Should start out with the Bill of Rights. Should start out with the Bill of Rights. It's the federal Constitution. Bill of Rights. Okay. Right here. Here we are, guys. Okay. That all men are by nature equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights of which, when they enter into a state of society, they cannot, by any compact, deprive or divest their posterity. Do you know what the word posterity means?
Not full definition.
Okay, posterity, like inheritance, right? Like heir. Post heir is your children and your children's children and your children's children's children. So this right here tells you that your mother can't sign a birth certificate and mortgage your freaking property rights, whether she knows she's doing it or not. That it's impossible. This right here, because of Article 4, Section 2, which is, let me share the window actually. Hold on. Okay, so I must have closed it. Hold on. Article 4, Section 2 shows you this. Section 2, right there. Perfect. So, right here, Article 4, Section 2. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities of the citizens in the several states, which means all citizens, all people of the several states have the same inherent rights as the citizens of the original 13 states, which are common law rights. And that tells you right here in the Bill of Literal Rights that all men are by nature equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights, of which when they enter into a state of society, they cannot, by any compact, you cannot contract, register, nothing, your posterity. You cannot divest your posterity by contract or nothing. Namely, the enjoyment of life and liberty, the means of acquiring and possessing property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety, which are the some definition of your common law rights. You cannot deprive your posterity, right? So that automatically makes the birth certificate null and void, the Social Security account null and void, unless you want it, because your mother could never do that to you. She could never, even though they wanted her to and they tricked her into doing it. This proves she could never do that to you. It is against the law. She cannot indenture you. She cannot indenture you. You have to become of age and then become indentured if you want to, which is why they have the selective service registration and all that bullshit when you turn 18. And then when you turn 21, there's some more bullshit. But the point is, they cannot deprive their posterity of the right to property. And ultimately, all law regards the right to property. Well, we got a new Jurist Society member. Exciting. That's awesome. We got the man in the middle. Fantastic, dude. Listen, so email me, burnthecorporatefiction@yahoo.com, and I will email you the link to our Jurist Society folder, which has all of our templates, claim, and a ton of valuable treaties, including the ones I've presented tonight, like the one that distinguishes resident alien from citizen. And yeah, as soon as you email me, I'll send that over to you. And then we're meeting again on Monday between 4 and 5, if you can make it. If not, watch the replay. We're going to meet, though. Generally, our actual meeting days are every Sunday, Thursday, and Saturdays are tentative, depending on who can make it and who cannot. And then I put out a community post. We got 3 meetings a week. We're going through the Private Express Trust, and we're going to put our property. A lot of us have already claimed our estates. I have my estate claimed. Mojo, how far along are you?
Not very far yet, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. I know you're busy, but you got to get it on the record.
Yeah, and it's my living situation, where living out of my trailer the way I am and things like that.
Yeah, but even being that way, it should be it'll be even easier. But most of us have our estates claimed, and now we're working on putting our property in a Private Express Trust. And that's what you have to do, like Sergeant Frogdog said. So the common law of contracts creates an independent pre-existing government entity, an entity that pre-exists government, because Article 1, Section 10 dictates that no state can make any law that impairs the obligation of contracts. Every single one of we, the people in this country, have the right to common law contract. And when you contract, you can contract and place your property in a private trust, and no state can pass any statute or code that impairs the obligation of the performance of that contract, or the performance of the obligation of that contract. So what that means is, when you put your property in the trust and you specifically say that it is never to be used for commercial purposes, you obliterate every statute and code that they have, and there's nothing they can do. There's literally volumes of case law that support it. So yeah, just go ahead and email me and I'll shoot that over to you. So anyway, this is powerful. My little brothers, actually, just like my dad, but they're on separate sides of the state, live in Virginia. Virginia is super communist, super fucking communist. And, you'll find that the southern states that were the most freedom oriented and common law oriented have been hit the hardest. That's what the whole Reconstruction Acts were all about, was beating those states into submission. But because of that, Virginia has the most solid original framework for property ownership, and you see it right here. Smooth Kings, I do not have a Telegram. I can make one, but I just haven't. I'm on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and X right now. So, but I plan on expanding eventually. Just those 4 social media platforms actually require a lot of maintenance. So, before I go on to another one, I gotta get everything streamlined. But anyways, yeah, so that right there cannot deprive their posterity. So now let's get into what they're actually trying to do right now. And this is what they're trying to do right now. This is a trick. and you're going to listen what I'm going to present, and I want everybody in my subscription base to know that I know this is a Q-tard. Okay, so I don't want somebody to tune in the second half of watching this video while I've got it playing and be like, why are you playing Q? Right? Well, are you a Q-tard? No, I'm not a Q-tard. This guy's a Q-tard, and he actually thinks that this new money system is going to be different from the Federal Reserve trust indenture enslavement system. It's not. All it is switching owners. Instead of, so what you're going to get, the new currency is going to be called the asset-backed treasury dividend dollar. Well, guess who the asset is, Mojo? Who's the asset? You're the asset.
Yes, me. Yep.
Yeah. And so what it actually is a trick to introduce universal basic income as AI takes over all the jobs. Okay? Because they're going to say, well, you're entitled to this. We use you as an asset. We borrow against your productive value, and we, attribute your productive value in our currency scheme and all this stuff because we have you indentured as a U.S. citizen originally under the 14th Amendment, accepting privileges, immunities, and benefits in exchange for parents patria or daddy government, please protect me and give me stuff. That's what the 14th Amendment's all about. Please protect me. Please give me stuff. I want municipal services. If my house catches on fire, I need somebody to, come and put it out. And if somebody's robbing me, I need someone to show up after I've already been shot and robbed to, maybe do a little poking around, never catch anybody, because that's all that fucking happens anyway. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's it. And when you accept those things, you come under them as an infant and a guardian, and then they can collateralize you for the public debt or the public currency. So now all they're going to do is, instead of collateralizing you for the public debt, now they're saying asset-backed hard currency that has tangible value. All they're actually doing is transferring you from being collateral for debt to being collateral for currency. Well, it's the same thing, actually, except for now they're assigning a positive value to it instead of a negative one, which is what was taking place under the Federal Reserve. So let's watch this dumbass actually think that this is a good thing, because the whole AI-driven asset-backed currency is the compliance to what makes you valuable is going to be enforced by artificial intelligence. Right now, as your property is mortgaged to back the Federal Reserve note, your compliance to the trust indenture, like the Motor Vehicle Code, Internal Revenue Code, where you pay property taxes, income taxes, and agreed to allow your property to be regulated by a foreign corporation and held in trust as collateral for a debt that's of a foreign corporation, right? Instead of that, they're going to switch it over. Now you're an asset, okay? But all the shit that I just said still applies. They're still going to regulate your property because that's what makes you valuable. The only thing that makes you valuable on either system is the ability to enforce compliance, which is what police are. Actually, right now, as it exists under the Federal Reserve Trust Indenture System, all townships and counties have bond ratings. Their bond rating is based on their ability to enforce compliance to the securities they generate, meaning tickets or, say, probation or any of that stuff. How well they're able to enforce compliance increases their value. Okay, they're doing the same thing with the new system, right? Except it's worse, because now they're going to say you're entitled to a dividend because we use you as an asset. And that's going to be the disguise. You're going to think, well, I'm entitled. Finally, the government realizes that I'm entitled to a benefit. But the reality of it is it's universal basic income, because AI is about to take everybody's fucking jobs. So let's watch this.
My advice to everybody is get ready for that. My advice to everybody is get ready for that. The financial system is getting ready to switch. All private central bankers have been notified and put on notice that we have to prepare our people for tokenization processes all throughout anything tied to the USD system. So the Federal Reserve, all private central bankers are going to be moving over onto the Ripple network. That's a given. For those of you that are following Q and Q program, the Anon series, you were right on track the entire time. But we know how that's going to work. For those of you that are not and you're operating on the public side, I'll tell you something very clearly right now. If you are not moving into the trust processes and you just can't do it and you can't manage to make that.
So he's right about that. You should do that anyways. That's what we're doing in the Jurist Society. You need to get your stuff into a private express trust. But then he thinks government's going to fix government. And he goes into the Q-tard thing.
Process work for yourself. What I want you to do is at least go get yourself some XRP and stick it over there, and you can thank me later when everything switches over. If we're being notified to notify our own clients, then that means that this is all signed, sealed, delivered. Everything is coming down the pipeline, and we're getting ready to flip the switch. Again, you don't want to be...
It's actually true. Today, Trump signed the executive order to create the Sovereign Wealth Reserve, which if you guys watched the last episode of the Debt Clock, where we were, or not the last one, but the one before, where I was talking about like they announced the end of the Fed and exposed the Fed and the whole scheme, but not revealing that theirs is also just pretty much the same scheme. It's the Sovereign Wealth Reserve, Sovereign Wealth Reserve that is in control of this whole switch. And they're the ones who are basically the administrators of your estate. So, right.
On the outside looking in, because when they flip that switch, if you're not an institutional program, you are not going to be able to access that side of the ledgers. So again, they're going to make it almost impossible for anybody to access those coins. I'm just giving you a quick heads up.
Yep. So, and that's true because he signed that executive order today, or rather yesterday, because it's after midnight. But all right, let me address a couple comments and then I'm going to shut this down for the evening. Just so you guys know, my dad, who some of you know, some of you don't, Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind, he's up in Michigan, and I'm going to take my daughter to go see her grandpa. And so I'm going to be gone all weekend. We're going doing a camping thing. I'll be back with you guys probably Monday night, just so you know. But let me address some of these questions or comments. So we have Sergeant Frog Dogs going crazy in the chat. And only acts of Congress and statutes at large can be determined at law. Actually, dude, like you have everything down except for that one thing. Read Blackstone's commentaries. Law, man cannot make law, right? So the only reason that the original statutes at large, they were called public law, the only reason they actually were public law is because they were in concordance with actual law, meaning they were actual crimes. And so they didn't need consent to obtain the color of law. They did not need so if I'm regulating property, say you live on my land and I'm regulating property, right? Or somebody, like people come on my land, I own a big town or something like that, and people come on my land, I'm regulating property. Now, to say that you have to drive 55 miles an hour on my roads, you have to have a license issued by me for that to stand. You have to have consented to agree to allow me to regulate your travel within my area. Okay? But now, in my area, if I say do not murder somebody unjustly, okay, which means like not self-defense or anything like that, right? Then now, coming through my land, you do not need consent, I do not need consent to enforce that because it is in concordance with law, so it doesn't require consent to take the color of law. It just does because it is colored by the law. But any other arbitrary rules regulating property, right, requires your consent. That's the difference. So you'll notice there was a shift where Congress went from making public law to public policy. And it was after the Civil War, and most especially after 1933. Now everything is public policy enforced by what? Police, policy enforcers. Because it's all regulation of property held in trust under an indenture used as collateral for the public debt, which is ongoing with no end date, and apparently still no end date with this new currency system, because now they're just going to try to trick you and be like, well, now because we're using you as collateral, we're going to give you a little bit of money. And that's going to be the universal basic income, because AI is about to take your freaking job. If you guys haven't noticed how much more advanced your phones and computer systems, different, all the software has gotten more exponentially more advanced within the last 2 months, because they're integrating the AI. They're about to switch everything over. There's about to be a lot of people losing their jobs, and they're going to have a justification. They can't call it UBI in this country because we all know what that is, right? It's ultimate, it's permanent, locked into communism. And we have the Second Amendment here. So old Trump and his gang of freaking small hat comrades, right? He's trying to trick you into thinking it's a good thing, of you're going to get a dividend of us using you as an asset, which they should already be doing. This is what all the guys who like to play in the UCC sandbox are trying to teach, though it will never work because they would not do it before. But now they're going to do it as a universal basic income. Like, yes, you as one of we the people, they cannot take your property without just compensation. That's why they choose to declare you missing, presumed dead under the set to KV, right? That's why. You as a federal agent, as an agent of the principal, being the bankrupt United States, you're an enfranchisement, right? You are merely a trustee of an estate under their administration. You are charged with performing the obligations placed on the estate. That's it. And you have no recourse of discharging debts through the Treasury because they choose not to recognize you as a living man or woman under the state, like or not under state, above the state, as one of the people of the state. And that's why I said the very nexus is what we attack. It's the 14th Amendment citizenship. You attack that. If you pulled that Jenga piece out, the entire system collapses in on itself immediately. You could leave the bar association, you can leave the banking system, you can leave everything else in this corrupt ass republic right now. You can leave all of it, all the administrative agencies, everything. Leave all of those things. But withdraw the 14th Amendment, and they have nothing to manage or govern anymore because you are the property. You are the sole source of value. You are the public chattel who is being used as who are being used as the battery for literally the Matrix. That's what the Matrix showed you. That was a big metaphor. You're plugged in, you're powering the corporate machine. You know, maybe you have skills, but the majority of people have no skills. They know how to do something in a factory or do something stupid at a service industry. You know what I mean? That they could never start a business doing on their own, and they're entirely dependent on that corporation's existence for their livelihood. And so they are indentured and enslaved because they were never taught to become self-sufficient. So with that, Mojo, do you have anything to add before I shut this down?
No, once again, Ryan, thanks for having me on, and much love to everybody in the chat for being there, and really enjoyed it. You're always informative.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully I can learn how to be entertaining too. It's hard to make the law both. You know what I mean?
You try doing it while juggling.
Yeah, right. Just be on camera juggling while I'm talking. Yeah, that would be incredible if I could do that. I'd be rich. But no, thank you guys, everyone, for joining me. Sergeant Frog Dog, you definitely know your stuff. But there's just that one thing is to the difference between law. So the very first thing that anybody trying to learn the law must absolutely, and I say this to people who try to come up and debate me when they're idiots, and I'm not going to waste my time, right? No offense to anybody. I'm not being narcissistic. I'm just being like, I spent a lot of time, energy, sweat equity into learning this stuff. I'm not going to entertain idiots. And so I say, okay, before I have a debate with you, can you explain to me the difference between law and equity? If you cannot explain the difference between law and equity, which Article 3, Section 2 makes an absolute distinction between the two, equity is not law and law is not equity, which is what I was trying to explain to you, Frog, which I'm sure you know to a degree, but like this will make it clear. Law is not equity, equity is not law. Equity supplies for the deficiencies of law because law is land. It's immovable, it's fixed, it's rigid, it's harsh, it's black and white. It's did you violate somebody's free will or not, right? So I'll give you guys an example. I could try to say that, hey, I put your barn out when it was on fire and you weren't home, okay? And you go, yeah, okay, cool, thank you. Say, okay, well, I'm entitled to some kind of compensation for that because you wouldn't have any property if I didn't save it. They'd be like, no, but I appreciate you. And then I can't take that to a court of law because that's not true. Because at law, he has to, of his own free will, give me his property if he wants to, a portion of it, right? but you can take it to a court of equity. And in equity, the judge, the bar association, is God. And you take it to a court of equity, and now it's up to the judge's conscience, because this is all fictitious, like pretending like if this didn't happen, this would have happened. It's all future stuff. The same reason trusts are adjudicated in equity, because it's all fictional, role-playing, Hollywood acting stuff, enactments. That's why they call them enactments, because it is an act. It is a role. It is not real, not tangible. It's a fiction at law, right? And cannot be adjudicated at law because it's a fiction. Fiction, law does not recognize fiction. Equity does. This is the point. So the fiction of he would have no property if I didn't save it, we can never know that for sure because I saved it. It's a fiction at law. Has to be adjudicated in equity. And in equity, the judge could be like, okay, he's right. Your barn was burning down. If he didn't save it, then you would have no property from your barn. So he's entitled to an equitable relief, but that is not law. It's not law. And that's why Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution makes a distinction between law and equity. So the very first, most important thing that you can learn is the difference between law and equity. And when you truly learn that difference and you actually comprehend it, fully integrate it into your perspective and the way that you view the world, then when you go to court, you can simply ask them, is this a court of law or equity? They say, well, this is a court of law. Okay, where's the victim in the signed sworn affidavit that I injured? How did I injure him? What happened? Where's that? Where are they at? Well, you didn't register your property. Oh, okay. No, so there is no victim? Oh, so this isn't a court of law. This is a court of equity. You're trying to enforce an agreement, contract, or trust arrangement then, right? It's that simple. It's the only two things that it can be, law or equity. All Roman civil law is entirely equity. It's an equity that only deals in fictions, and there is no such thing as real people in Roman civil law. That's why they adopted and brought that over here and distinguished the difference between law and equity, and then eventually absolved the distinction between civil and maritime law, so they could bring international trade and military law inland entirely, right? That's what they've done. But that is the simple truth. Law or equity. Law, this is a court of law, I must have a victim. Where's the victim? Where's he at? Or she, right? Where's the signed sworn affidavit and the witnesses that are required by pretty much every state constitution and the federal constitution? Where's this at? Oh, okay, you don't have one. So you're saying that I broke the quote unquote law for not giving you the controlling interest in my property to use as collateral for the debt of a foreign corporation? Is that what's going on here? Right? So this is a court of equity. All right, now you need to tell me how you presume that I am subject to that agreement. Did you get my claim on the record? Right? So I've got a claim on the record. Did you get that? And they do. And see, that's the thing. That's the reason why when you know how to explain that and you claim your estate on the record, like we teach in the Jurist Society, and you send that shit to them, and then you know how to back it up by saying, is this court of law or equity? Right? Well, you know my property's not under administration, so there has to be a victim here somewhere, right? Where's the living victim whose free will I violated? Where are they at? Nowhere? Oh, okay. That's how you get them. You have to know that fundamental difference. I will not even speak to anybody if you can't explain to me, like on law, like debate, like you tell me I'm wrong, but you can't tell me the difference between law and equity, then we have no business speaking to each other because you're still uneducated. You're still not uneducated, unlearned in law. Like you're still unlearned. That is the very fundamental difference. What they have tried to do, because discretion, Black's Law Dictionary, is the discretion of a judge, and it's the equitable discretion of a judge. And like Bouvier says, in Bouvier's dictionary, he says that the discretion of a judge is the law of tyrants because of the variations and corruptibility of men, essentially, right? Like, so now you're not dealing with law. You're dealing with private contract, private law, and it's all up to the conscience of a judge. He can rule however he sees fit. That's why they wanted to make the whole system equity. And they did that by taking away lawful money and locking you into a trust relationship with your own property that they do not recognize as yours. They recognize it as under their administration, and the heir or owner is missing, presumed dead, and you are merely personnel of the corporation administering it, your chattel property of that estate, and that's what they're summoning, because it's a dead entity, into their courts. So with that, I'll leave you guys tonight. Mojo, do you have anything?
No, just covered it earlier, and again, appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. So I went on a pontification after we went to end last time, but you know, I do that. So anyways, you guys have an excellent night. Always love being able to speak to people that are interested in the law, because you know, most people fall, you know, they're like, oh, that shit's boring, right? No, it's the only thing that matters. It governs everything. It determines your children. It determines the future of your children. Purely, it does. Absolutely. And so I always enjoy being able to have, you know, even 40 people listening right now and just willing to learn this stuff, because the only way it will actually, yes, we have remedies in the Jurist Society. We claim our estates and we become a giant pain in their ass. But the only way that it's actually going to change for good to where we don't have to fight anymore is if we reach a critical mass of awareness. And that is what all of you who are viewing help to do. So I appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you, Mojo, for coming up tonight. You, as always, you contribute and ask the questions that we need you to, that other people might be thinking. And of course, you're knowledgeable in law now. So
yeah, I don't know if you want to get into it. There's some people in chat were asking about a zip code.
Yeah, zone improvement program.
Right. If you use the mail, are you like contracting with the United States Postal Service by sending a letter?
No, okay, so I can address, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. That's why I also like having you up here, because I pontificate and you read the chat and I don't always, you know, get a chance to look at it. But so the zip code, most, like when you go to file your claim on the record, they want a zip code. They won't file it without a zip code. So it's easy. It's easy to circumvent. You just put the zip code in brackets. Nothing they can do about it, because it's the rules and styles, like in the Oxford style or any writing, anything in brackets is technically not on the page. So I had that when I was filing my claim. She took it back to the clerk, and the clerk sat there and read it for about 15-20 minutes and had me out there in the lobby waiting with my daughter, you know, with my young daughter. We're just sitting there. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. I'm like, what kind of bullshit are they going to come back with? And I'm going to have to, I already had a notice of demand drafted up that like, hey, this is your job. You're a public official. You have to record my document on the record that affects a change of title, change of ownership, right? On the record, you have to do this without question. Every state has statutes that has to happen, and they can be punished for a form of malfeasance, right? So I had that drafted up. So she's got it back there with the clerk. They're reading it for about 15 minutes. I actually got it on video. Well, I got it recorded. Like I had the phone face down, so she didn't know I was recording, but I got it on video, the whole thing. And so she's back there for about 15 minutes, and then she comes back and she goes, okay. She's like, all right, so are we returning this to the mailing address or after they file it, right? And I'm like, well, I was hoping you'd just kind of give it to me today. Well, we're not going to get to it today, recording it, all that stuff. Do you know, so how do you want it returned to you? I said, okay, mail it to me. She's like, do you want me to put House of Wells? I said, yes, I want you to put House of Wells. She goes, okay, well, I need a zip code. And I said, I was thinking, nice fucking try, right? And I said, oh, well, you can't file it without that's zone improvement program. You can't file it without the zip code. She said, well, we need the zip code. I said, okay, no problem. I took my claim all typed up, and in pen, I put in brackets my zip code next to it. I said, there you go. And she looked at it and she looked pissed, but she recorded it. And because the brackets make it it's not there. You guys can look this up in your own time. It's not there. When you file, when you write something in brackets, lawfully, legally, it's not on the page. It's there on the page for the person reading it, obviously. In fact, just like everything they do, it's, you know, fiction versus fact. You know, in fiction, you should register your property because you're indentured to the corporation that gives you your existence. But in reality, right? Like at law, they're actually trying to cause you financial injury for not conveying the right of your property to the state to be used as collateral for the debt of a foreign corporation. So, you know, it's everything they do. So I put it in brackets. I'm like, sure, I'll put the zip code on there. Who cares? Put the fucking thing in brackets. Nothing they can do about it. It's there. You can read it. It's not technically there lawfully. You can't enforce that, like my consent to be under the zone improvement program as a 14th Amendment citizen. But you have the zip code now to get it back to me. And it worked. That's how you do it. Just brackets. That's it. Make sure you use brackets.
Should you also, what about if I just want to mail a letter or a package to somebody using a zip code? Is that any way enter me in a contract with the post office or parcel service?
Just brackets, dude. Always put it in brackets. If you're going to use a zip code, put it in brackets. It really is that simple.
Gotcha.
Yep, just use brackets. If you're going to use the zip code, you can be smooth and not cause any problems and just put it in brackets. And, you know, the mail people, nobody's going to really know what that means, but the people who try to enforce jurisdictional authority against you definitely know what it means. So that's how you do that. So Sergeant Frog Dog says, looking at the passport application while explaining the four corner rule, I found to be the easiest to make it make sense. I say just, well, they stopped doing the passport thing. It's, to my knowledge, I don't know if you have one, but they definitely closed that. And that's the whole thing about playing in their system and asking the government for permission for anything is they can do whatever they want with it. It's like Play-Doh that they own. They can mold it however they want. When you return back to the law, claim your estate, then they have to follow the law to deal with you. That's the whole thing. So you don't ask them for permission. That's why we're using the private express trust to protect our property, because it's a common law trust protected by the common law right to contract that literally creates a legal person that is antecedent, meaning before government and above it, even though it's a fiction at law. It's not subject to statutes and codes because its laws and its obligations laid out in that contract supersede those things according to Article 1, Section 10. And that's why we use that avenue. So anyway, with that, guys, I got to get to bed. Got a big day tomorrow, and I will see you guys Monday evening. And Mojo, as always, thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys soon.
Good night, all.
And yes, Peg's Place, I know Australia's jacked up. You got 4 places to put stuff in. Listen, you guys had drones flying around with facial recognition to see if you're outside your freaking quarantine zone. So it doesn't surprise me with Australia. Every nation that gave up its arms has a problem. So you guys have a great night, and I will see you Monday.